Oh. Shut up. Where's that coming from? Why are you letting Sneeko farm you for clips still? Did he farm you for clips, or do you mean him coming on yesterday? Oh. Who are your little buddies? Well, one was Connor Points, and the other was a friend from your mom's house. Oh. What do you have to say about the thug hunting allegations? I am a thug hunter, and I do hunt thugs. And by thugs, I mean black people. And by hunt, I mean find them and give them hugs. Because I love black people. Zerka roasts Adam 22. I don't know if I care. All right. Most insane video you watched this week. Thoughts on Rice Gum Senator Rumble? I saw the tweet thing yesterday. I thought it was kind of funny. He tried to make a big show of where's he going to sign to. He put Twitch, Rumble, Kick, and YouTube. Twitch doesn't sign anybody. YouTube isn't signing anybody. And Kick is only signing streamers. So it was guaranteed to be Rumble. I also have no idea how popular Rice Gum even is now.
A black person in my chair not too long ago called me the N-word. More specifically, he called me his N-word. You my N-word. It's never happened to me before. Never had a black person, definitely not at work, for sure. I don't think any time in my entire life has that ever happened. At the same time, he puts his hand out like this. You my N-word. Puts his hand out, and then my hand goes into his. So imagine one of these hands is black. And then the hands come together. It felt like a sonic boom was created. This warmth entered my body, and I felt like we solved racism. Just right then and there. It was like everything's okay. We are cool AF.
Base.
We're good. That's what it felt like. What did I do for him? I rushed his crown. So crowns normally are a 10-day turnaround, and he was traveling and had some commitments. I got to have that sooner. And I was like, let me make a phone call. Have it back to you in 3 days. You my. Boom. Hand clasp. Sonic boom. Racism solved. So now I'm his ride or die. And I don't think he knows that. So black people, you want a ride or die white person? Call him your N-word. It comes at a cost. It comes at a cost.
Because now I call it my N-word. Oh, wait.
Now I think, I'm not going to say the N-word, but I'm thinking about it. I shouldn't even be thinking about that, but I am thinking about it. And I know I shouldn't, but it's like,
this can't be real. He can't be a real dentist or doctor, right? I feel like this skit is way too edgy for a guy that has a real job, right? Am I crazy?
You get into a club that you're never going to get into normally, but someone vouches for you, so you're in there. Now, you're in the club, but that doesn't mean you can act like a fool when you're in the club. You can't do that. You'll get kicked out of the club and never invited back. So I'm in the club, and I'm so excited, I just don't know if I can behave myself. So that's the cost. But man, does it feel good. It might be the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me in my life. Definitely in my career, for sure. Oh, you're a fellow for the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry? Oh, that's a nice certificate. Have you ever had a black person call you their N-word? No? Yeah, keep working. Keep working hard. You'll get there. Trust me. Just keep working hard. It's the pinnacle of accomplishment. I don't even care about anything else. That's all I want. I want that more. What's the only thing better than having that happen once? Have it happen twice. So I think that means I have to rush crowns
For every black person.
for all my black patients. Is that racist? I don't care. I don't care. I'm chasing that feeling. I'm solving racism one rushed crown at a time.
You ever gonna do a chat wars, GG versus YouTube versus Kick Chat? I don't even know how I would begin to set that up. Oh no.
Probably. I'm not fully aware of what is happening, but the reality is this, right? It's gonna be, my commentary on this issue is gonna be probably identical to what I've said so far. That's part of the reason why I'm always like, ugh, we got to talk about this again. Here, I blast.
Something that I've kind of absorbed. I should read. I've got 2 papers. We might read them. Academic papers are really just a good way to learn. I'm going to be honest. I actually do read a decent amount. I don't read books, but I do read papers that people send me. That's not an invitation to me to ton of streams, but I have picked up like a lot of interesting info. Somebody's made a paper a while ago. I would read them on stream, but they're so boring, and it's so much reading. Somebody sent me an academic paper. I'm not gonna be able to find it. God damn it. A paper. It had to do with winning with grace, and that it was like one of the most important things when it comes to securing like political achievements. It might have been a section of a book actually, but it was like a recommendation. And it basically the idea is that like one of the cornerstones of politics is if you secure a political victory, if you get a victory, winning with grace is really important because it doesn't foster resentment from the other
Pick or
side.
keep with equal members from DGG.
So they're not
YouTube
looking
and
to
Kick Chat.
like get even. And the more that I see the way that certain people act, the more I kind of vibrate on those frequencies. I kind of think that might be important. That winning with, getting a win, being chill, and then winning with grace is like, I think important. I think that's an important thing that more people need to do. Our buddy's coming on stream. No, she left. Connor's at his house. I'm good.
It off, by the way. Let the people know. Let your friends know. Let your family know. We're live and we're alive. Here you go. The thing is, transphobes have trans on the mind more than trans people. Yeah. It's like, it's a situation where you can have like any kind of valid gripe, right? Or like any kind of minor criticism. But in many circumstances, allyship means you're not going to fucking like take a minute issue that's not even really an issue at all and like put it on the fucking forefront. Because the people that do that are people who want to constantly weaponize any kind of like cringe, for example, a marginalized community member might be behaving as. Okay? I've talked about this a lot, where it's like...
So remember what I said. The issue isn't that. The reality is most trans people, even on Twitter, are probably decent, reasonable people. You don't see those people. What you see are the crazies. But the problem, the issue, is everybody is willing to defend the crazies. If they were disavowed, you wouldn't have a problem. Nobody would be talking about it. That's the issue.
Like, cringe is not illegal.
Also, fuck, I want to wait till I have more viewers on this. Carry this message from the rooftops, okay? As part of my being more confident, even in my historical takes. There is a really cringe, like reverse rewrite of history or something going on here, where people are trying to pretend that the civil rights movement was actually way more violent than we give it credit for, and that was actually the real reason why it succeeded. And the way that people try to explain this is they go, well, people at the time complained a lot about it, and some people at the time were saying it was violent. Okay, yeah, but that's kind of like, people will always say a certain thing, but it's not going to be as effective if you're not actually doing the thing. This is something that we saw very recently with the George Floyd protests, riots, the BLM stuff. Having somebody getting attacked by the police when you are not doing anything, when you just look like you're getting your ass kicked for no reason, is one of the easiest ways to get people to be sympathetic towards you. This absolutely happened in places like Selma. During the, I think they made a movie about it called Selma, okay? So I'm sure you guys have all heard of it, okay? This is like, it's undeniable. And on the flip side, burning cities down is the easiest way to destroy support for your movement. It happened, arguably, with some of civil rights, and it happened inarguably with BLM and post-George Floyd. Don't let cringe LARPing white retards or weird black separatist Afro history-centric losers on Twitter try to rewrite history and say, no, civil rights only work because of the violent element, or violence was a major part of it. It's absolute bullshit. It's absolute bullshit.
Legal, and if someone is being cringe, for example, if someone from a minority group is being cringe, for example, that doesn't mean that like this is representative of everything. It's not politics. You're just like
Wishful thinking to assume that a terminally online trans person represents a meaningless minority of all trans people. What makes
looking
you
at
think
every
so?
and any kind of reason you can.
I just said it didn't. What? What I said was that the people. The problem is everybody willing to defend it. That's the issue.
Happy birthday, Summit DGG.
You get upset at people. I don't even know. I don't even know what Anna said or did. I've only seen like some
reactions to it.
Memes like this. You got to get your leftist card revoked. What the hell? The civil rights movement did not use the same strategies as the trans movement. They didn't barricade speakers when they disagreed in a classroom for 3 hours. They persuaded through nonviolence and showing America their humanity. It's kind of funny because like this take is not all that different than what they have said in the past. If you like really listen to what TYT says all the time, like it's the classic like, well, you know, MLK was non-violent, whereas Malcolm X was like not the best. Even though Cenk does concede and say that Cenk does concede, which by the way is ahistorical, but Cenk does concede and say that there's.
I did pre-watch it. I'm sorry, I forgot exactly when he said the word, but I did indeed pre-watch this entire video. That's why I've been gone. Sorry, I misplaced where the word was. My bad. My mistake.
There's two sides to this coin, and that you know, without Malcolm X, MLK doesn't work on his own.
That's bullshit, and it's not true. So this is something that took me. It was like two really important people, and then a whole bunch of experience. This is probably the most important lesson I've learned, probably in the past like 4 to 5 years in dealing with stuff online. It is a very, very, very cucked position to take, but having true strength. And here you go. This is a life lesson. It took me a long time to learn this, okay? Life lesson. I don't know how you would... I have no idea how you would apply this to a normal person's life. But it is... what strength for your movement basically means being able to get completely fucked up by the opposition over and over and over again while still marching forward. If you can do that, it takes more strength to do that than it takes to fight back, believe it or not. Because it requires in some cases, the physical capacity to carry on, but it also has a much higher psychological burden too, because holy shit, are you justified sometimes in fighting back. But you have to pick those moments very, 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 very carefully, and you have to run the risk of knowing that every single time you fight back, it might not be the best thing, it might not look good, it might not even be the correct decision, but yeah. So this is something I've learned in my own life that I'm still working on applying in my, whatever the fuck you call my online adventure. And it is something that MLK and others during the civil rights movement absolutely understood. And we've seen this play out on larger scales empirically, right? But yeah, I mean, like MLK like read or was largely inspired by Gandhi and everything too. So the idea that there was like some dual strategy, I think I've actually even repeated this dog shit talking about in the past. The idea that there was some dual strategy of like violence, and then if you don't listen to us, the violent people are gonna get you. The idea that there's some dual is bullshit. That's ahistorical.
You know what I mean? So he does
The
recognize.
reason why, also the reason why I use MLK as examples when I speak about stuff like this is because I do consider myself I'm basically MLK. I would say Martin Luther King Jr. is basically me, you know? That is why. So if you ever hear that, like, is he comparing someone to MLK? It's not so much that I'm comparing myself to MLK. It's more like I'm kind of like equating myself to MLK. Because I think more or less we're like the same kind of person, if you ever hear that, you know? Yeah. Except for like, I could probably get away with using the N-word more than him because he was a preacher, you know? So...
recognize that. It is pretty funny. I don't know who the fuck got barricaded for 3 hours. I don't even know what this is. But
oh, does he really not know that story? Wasn't there it wasn't Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? It was was it a state representative or somebody basically got chased into their office and like a whole bunch of, it was activists for trans movements or trans activists outside. Yeah, but you disagree with the Anna tweet. Not really, Pisco. I already know what you're gonna argue. Pisco is gonna, if you want to come in and argue, Pisco's gonna come in and argue, well, her tweet is highly problematic because it characterizes the majority of the trans movement as being violent. That's what he's gonna come in and so he's gonna say, so you disagree with the majority of the tweet because of how it characterizes the trans movement. I don't think that is necessarily what she's going for in the tweet, and I don't want to sit here and like dance over the hyper semantics of that. I think the general characterization of people being incredibly militant with how they fixate on kind of this trans advocacy in public is not something I think her tweet is more or less accurate.
the irony is that like all kinds of political movements that have worked against hierarchical constructs are always going to be considered violent because they're uprooting the pre-established norms, the pre-established rules of society. So ultimately, it doesn't matter, even if it's like literally baby politics. In the same way that shitting on trans people and the violence that comes along with that, or the normalization of the violence that comes along with that, is not seen as violent because it is the pre-existing construct. You can go out and dehumanize trans people. You can go out and like misgender trans people, and there's going to be debate around whether or not that is even hate speech to begin with. That in and of itself is a
I don't know. I don't agree. Aside from like some very deliberate right-wing outlets, I think generally speaking, most people don't like misgender trans people intentionally or whatever. But I mean, like if you're like watching the Daily Wire, they might. I don't know on Fox News. On Fox News, do they misgender people anymore? I'm not sure. I haven't kept up with Fox News people. I don't know what they got going on ever since they booted Tucker. Yeah, what do you got for me, buddy?
What's up? How are you?
I'm good.
Okay. Hey, I saw your tweet.
Yeah, what's up?
I think that you should take it down.
No, but you can tell me why you'd like me to.
Yeah, because I think that there are a couple things that you will agree with me on, and the conclusions will follow, and then it's not the case that you 100% agree with it, or even 50% agree, I would say.
Okay, go for it. What do you got?
Do you agree that Anna, in her tweet, is characterizing the trans movement as not using nonviolence?
Jesus, hold on. You're gonna hit me with the double negatives? Let me go and double check the tweet so I can get this exactly. Wait, did she delete the tweet?
You can see my quote tweet. Sure, you've seen it.
Fuck, hold on, let me find your tweet.
I have some helpful highlights there.
Pisco 95, right? No, wait,
Pisco
what?
Liddy.
What?
Pisco Liddy.
Pisco Liddy?
It's because it's like Pisco is an alcohol. You get lit, and I also am a litigator.
Okay,
Pisco
how you gotta
Liddy?
spell your Twitter name for me? I don't know how you spell
At-
Pisco.
At Pisco Liddy. Pisco Liddy Litty.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. The civil rights movement did not use the same strategies as the trans movement. They didn't barricade speakers they disagreed with in a classroom for 3 hours. They persuaded through nonviolence and showing America their humanity.
You agree with this tweet 100% as of now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think Anna is saying that the trans movement is different than the civil rights movement in that the civil rights movement used nonviolence and the trans movement doesn't?
I think, yes, partially, yeah.
What do you mean partially?
I think that broadly speaking, it seems to be the case that one of the important things that was understood about social activism 60, 70 years ago.
Oh, sorry, I'm just asking what she's saying, what you think she's saying.
I'm not going to be able to, if we're going to artistically focus on 1 or 2 words, you auto win, but nobody's reading the tweet that way or engaging that way, so I'm not going to focus on like 1 or 2 words. If you want me to just parse the language of the tweet, I can just do that for you if you want, but you're not going to convince me of anything. But I can do that. Ask me a question again. We'll do that first. Go for it.
Okay, let's do this.
Go.
Wait.
Ask me the exact same question again, and we'll go by the language of the tweet. Yeah, go.
Do you think that she is saying that one of the ways in which the civil rights movement is different than the trans movement is that the civil rights movement used nonviolence and the trans movement didn't?
That they persuaded through nonviolence, correct.
Okay. Do you agree that the civil rights movement persuaded through nonviolence and the trans movement doesn't persuade through nonviolence?
Conjunction. The civil rights movement's goal was to persuade through nonviolence, yes.
Does the trans movement persuade with nonviolence? Largely, overwhelmingly.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
Okay, so I'll give you 2 options.
Okay.
Does it persuade through violence or nonviolence?
I think right now, I think there's a healthy combination of both. And I think both are publicly encouraged to an extreme amount.
So you think
when you've got multiple people talking about the trans genocide, that we need to, the Vosh clips, probably TYT clips, Majority Report clips, that things like women's sports need to be eliminated. When you've got people doing the song and dance of like, we're coming for your kids. When you've got like in terms of like physical violence, people running and like killing people, maybe not. But in terms of like incredibly aggressive and in some cases violent actions, I think that right now socially, I think there's a high degree of encouragement there. Yeah, I think there's a big degree of encouragement there.
Okay, so you think that
for instance, when she references that thing, they didn't barricade speakers, they disagreed in a classroom for 3 hours. I don't think any left-leaning figure came out and condemned that. You can tell me if I'm wrong, though.
So you think that it's comparable, the way in which the trans rights movement persuades, they're similar in magnitude, either through violence or nonviolence?
Are you asking me that I have to like pick one?
Is there widespread violence in the trans rights movement?
Not yet. No. If we're defining violence like physical attacking and stuff, probably not yet. No.
So would you agree that the trans rights movement operates largely through nonviolence?
Not really. No. Like the term violence is like, it's so, like, are you just saying like physical violence or like, do you mean
I'm using the term that Anna used that you agreed
with.
But
okay. We'll go down this path. But I'm just letting you know in advance, you're not going to convince me of anything by like playing the dictionary definitions of the words. But no, right now the trans movement is largely peaceful. Yes.
Okay. And they're achieving aims, aren't they? They're achieving their goals.
Are they? I don't know. Maybe.
Aren't they?
They have in the past, but isn't there a record amount of anti-trans legislation and anti-trans sentiment? Aren't people reversing trends on their trans acceptance in the entire United States across every single political party?
To the extent that they're getting any gains, you would agree currently it's through nonviolence?
Yes.
Then you disagree with Anna.
Okay.
Don't you agree? She's saying that they don't use nonviolence to persuade.
I agree 100%.
You say they do use nonviolence to persuade.
Sure, that's because I'm wrong and stupid.
You can meme, but that's just...
I'm memeing because nobody is parsing the tweet this way. Like, literally nobody is going to read this. No, they're absolutely not. Okay, well then riddle me this. Why is there the perception that these movements are so incredibly aggressive right now compared to anything we've seen trans-related in the past?
One, I would say 2 reasons. One, because there are a lot of prominent people who are playing into that rhetoric. You're absolutely right about that. You are absolutely correct that there are people playing into that rhetoric. Vosh is one of them, and there are others, prominent people who play into that rhetoric. That is true. The other part that you don't want to acknowledge is that there's a malicious effort to paint the whole movement as violent, just like there is for every other movement that people disagree with.
Do you think
Would
that you can
call
paint
the
any
MAGA
movement?
a violent movement? Would you call it that? This standard is unworkable.
Yeah, because the word violence is so unbelievably vague. And you can hide around the vagary if you want, although it's largely boring to me. But the question is do you think that do you think that the perception that these movements are incredibly aggressive, right? Do you think that perception is just largely manufactured, that conservatives have successfully invented that narrative out of thin air, that all of these left-leaning people, even if Anna Kasparian, do you think they're just victims of Tucker Carlson?
No, listen, if what you're characterizing as aggressive carries with the baggage of imposing on others their worldview, of course the trans movement's trying to do that. They want to impose their vision of acceptance. If you think
not
that's
all
what
types of
about.
imposition are the same, though.
No, but they are trying to spread. They are trying to push their ideology.
Okay, so
but hang on.
Yeah.
All movements do this, and to characterize something.
No,
as
I wholly
violent,
disagree with what you just said. But
wait, all movements don't.
yeah, you're
you're
hiding in the vagary of what you're saying. All movements try to persuade. Not all movements have the power to effectively cancel people's jobs, lives, get them banned from platforms, enact violence in certain ways and not be held accountable for it. Not all movements have the ability to do that. That is not true. So you can say. If you were to ask right now, here's a thing that I would guess. If you were to ask right now of progressives, did more people die during January 6th or all of the BLM riots? I bet 25% of progressives would say probably January 6th. So the idea that these movements try to persuade the same or are held to the same standards, the same level, that's fucking delusional. Unless you want to just hide around the idea trans people aren't violent because they're not running around killing everybody.
That's a great example to bring up, the Black Lives Matter movement. Would you call that a violent movement? Or is it largely nonviolent?
I would say it was largely nonviolent, but the issue that you're running into here is the violence is not condemned. If it were to become violent, it would be defended. And I think that's what everybody in the entire United States, except for progressives and I guess trans people, can't see right now. That if tomorrow there were mass trans shooters, I don't think anybody in the left I think they would be fucking silent about it. Or I think some might even justify it.
That's an unfalsifiable position.
It is.
It's not a logical one. That's not how we talk about
I don't know if
things.
I wouldn't say it's logical, but I think that we've made really big jumps in the discourse in terms of how people are treating the differences in some of these situations, and it's pretty remarkable, the extent of stuff that will be defended by people on the left or that people on the left will remain quiet about. I think that's pretty insane.
Or on the right, and you're trying to call out the trans movement as having some aspect of violence that's not true or I don't know, that should be called out. But you just said that they largely achieved their aims to the extent that they achieved them through nonviolence. That's exactly what Anna Kasparian in her dumb tweet is saying is not the case. She says, no. The civil rights movement, they largely used nonviolence. They persuaded through nonviolence. That's how the civil rights is different than the trans movement. You're denying that premise.
Because I think that for the trans movement, I think it wasn't even implicit. It was explicitly understood that the only way victory was going to be achieved was through massive, nonviolent, peaceful demonstrations. That was largely the largest path to victory, and it's what the most predominant leaders generally advocated for. I don't believe that's the same anymore. I don't think that's the same today. I think today it's seen as more that the opposition needs to be eliminated one way or another and will destroy their lives in any way possible. And even if shootings and shit happen, it sucks, but riots are the language of the unheard. How many times did I hear that to justify BLM riots? How many large figures do I need to hear justify shoplifting and theft and arson of businesses, right? People say, oh, it's CVS, who cares if you stole from it? That's markedly
wrong.
Different. What's wrong?
That's wrong. Yeah, that's wrong. That's
sure,
wrong
but it's not that it's just wrong. It's massively defended on that side. And this is why people like Anna are looking and be like, hold up, this is fucking insane. How many times did I hear on the Majority Report, Sam Seder and the other people say, okay, yeah, that black guy on the train, he said that, I don't care if I die, but is that really a threat? Did he actually hit somebody? These are insane statements.
The BLM and the trans advocates need to apologize for shit the Majority Report says and Vosh says. They're being defined by these spokespeople.
Yeah. You are. Yes, you are.
And-
yeah,
and
you,
you're
you will
letting-
be. Yes.
You're letting the overwhelming good work, which I think you would probably agree with, even if you don't agree with all the quote trans takes with respect to sports, with respect, you don't agree with these laws that are being passed by the Republican governments. They're way too burdensome. You're on the other side. You are trans positive, or I don't know if that's you believe in trans rights. You're one of the most trans positive, I would say, creators in the normal sphere of political thought.
Okay.
Beyond the radicals on either side. So why would you ever characterize what you consider to be largely non-violent means to achieve and persuade as somehow being distinct in the respect of violence to the civil rights movement? They're different in some ways, no doubt. In many ways, in key ways. And
I think the overarching difference, I'll say this again, is that in the civil rights movement, they tried to succeed in spite of other violent actors. And those people were, they were shamed. You weren't supposed to do that. There were marches for Martin Luther King where they would go up and down the lines and they would collect knives, bats, whatever the fuck they could find, just to ensure they would go to places knowing they were going to get attacked, not looking to fight, right? That is not, do you agree
What exactly
that
are we
that's, do you
saying
think
is
that that's
violence
the
in the
same
trans
attitude
movement?
that exists today?
I don't know what the
No,
the
hold on. No.
practices are.
Hold on.
Wait,
Sorry.
I don't know if they do gun checks at trans.
I'm not. No. I'm not
advocate.
asking about. Hold on. Okay, you got to disengage lawyer procedure brain mode and just think as a normal human being. Okay.
Yeah.
For civil rights marches, explicitly, not even implied, explicitly, this will be nonviolent. We might get attacked by the cops. We're not going to fight back. We're going to garner sympathy, and that's how we're going to get support. Do you think that same attitude exists today when you think of Antifa, BLM marches, trans
I'm not
demonstrations?
considering Antifa. I'm not considering BLM.
It's all.
Am
It's
I?
all kind
Are
of.
you
It's all,
asking?
I
It's
mean,
all connected.
yes. Yeah. It is kind of all
It's a
connected.
they,
now.
them. Isn't that a stupid characterization of everything? Everything's everything. It's all left. It's all one thing.
All of
It's-
these progressive movements, all the tactics, all the organizations, all the politicians, all the speakers, yes, I think are largely all run in the same crowd and all exhibit the same type of strategy and all play on the same team.
So when Biden condemns violence, even in BLM riots, that should speak positively about the trans movement. Are you ever going to say that the thoughts and statements of the Democratic establishment right now, those that are against the violence, are you ever going to give the trans movement credit for those statements?
No,
if not,
because the more extreme speakers,
then
they
why
fucking
would you-
hate the Biden administration. They
God.
stand apart from them. What do you mean?
You are letting your mind be warped by Twitter.
Okay.
You are letting your I don't know what
There's
to say.
I mean, like that statement will only go so far. It's already ran out of use for me. Like a year ago, you can keep using it for as long as you want. But this idea, like, oh, it's just Twitter, like that ship sailed like 5 years ago. But if you want to say that, that's fine. But I mean, like, yeah.
So the trans movement needs to answer for all the other organizations on the left as part of what's going on. They need to answer for the violence of Antifa. They need to answer for the violence of the BLM riots. That's on the trans advocates' hands. They need to answer for that.
Yes. That's part of what being an advocate is. Yeah. If I was preaching for a position, if I really wanted to put on the ballot the right to incestuous relationships, and that was really important to me, and all of a sudden, people that claimed to be a part of DGG went out and started killing people that were opposed to incest relationships or something. Yes, I need to speak out and say something. I can't be silent on that issue because that's going to define my movement. Because Pisco, that's how every single movement works. It's how the Tea Party was hijacked by Glenn Beck. Mm-hmm. It's how BLM largely came to be represented by the fucking Black Lives Matter organization. There was a bunch of fucking scammers and other things. Yeah, if you don't say anything, if you don't have speakers to speak out against something, then somebody will step up, speak for it, and hijack the movement. Yeah, that's how it works, of course. I don't even think it's controversial. It sucks. It's not a nice reality. But yeah, you can't pretend to be this discollected group of people. And I see this all the time. It's like, oh, well, that person doesn't speak for us. Okay. Well, when every single person seems to be on board with the messaging, when every single person seems to be okay with condemning Rittenhouse and silent on Reinhold, or when every single person seems to be, what was that trans shooter in Tennessee where they were like, well, we kind of understand why you'd be a mass shooter or trans, but Uvalde or Buffalo, New York, like, no, that it can't be the case that all the public speech does this over and over and over again. And we're like, well, that doesn't represent the movement. It's like when you go into Reddit and the top comment is like, I hate women, kill bitches.
By your own words, it doesn't. By your own words, it doesn't.
But it does. But in public perception, it becomes to. Yes.
That's due to a failure of people like you from calling out that warped and incorrect messaging.
No, nobody. Yeah, I agree, but that's part of the problem. That's what people are trying to. I think is like trying to correct. Is it has to be called out. Nobody wants to call it out.
But the reality that you acknowledge is that this movement is by and large peaceful, and for you to sit here and say that this movement that you've characterized as largely peaceful needs to answer for being a violent movement.
They don't need to answer for
That's
being a
absurd.
violent movement. They need to disavow violence and wholly condemn it instead of implicitly or explicitly supporting it and kind of like grinning out of one side of their face.
Yeah, but that's not what Anna said, is it?
That's essentially what she
Anna
said.
didn't say the trans movement needs to embrace, more open and vocal
Yeah, because
calls
not
for
every tweet
nonviolence.
is going to be
She said-
7,000 words. They're not writing dissertations on Twitter.
He characterized. I mean, just imagine that she were talking about something else other than the trans movement, something that's not so close to. Imagine that she had said roughly the same thing about BLM. Would you agree with that tweet?
I would endorse it even more. Yes.
The civil rights movement did not use the same strategies as the BLM movement. They persuaded through nonviolence and showing America their humanity. And so you would sit here. That is an implicit acknowledgement that the BLM movement is using.
It's because
violence
it's because that the BLM movement did not
characterized by
condemn violence though. That's the issue. They didn't condemn the violence. There was a lot of excuses made for it, and in some cases, it almost seemed to be encouraged. And when that's largely the character of the movement, I don't think anybody's going to sit around and say, "Well, as long as like 49% of protests are peaceful, it's fine."
But she's not referencing their acquiescence to violence. She's referencing their methods. She's referencing directly their methods. How are they achieving their outcomes? They're achieving their outcomes through violence or non-violence. And you saying on the side, well, I wish they would be more vocal. I agree with that. They should be more vocal about violence. And you know what? In many circles, they weren't. I am proud of the president for coming out against the violence that occurred. But in many, including politicians, it wasn't fast enough.
Sure.
But what she's talking about are the methods by which their aims are achieved, not their lack of forceful opposition.
Her literal follow-up tweet is, "Are you guys genuinely this stupid? The movement made a point to be non-violent, and the violence used against them is part of what changed hearts and minds. Trans activist barricading speaker at SFSU runs counter to that strategy. Holy
She didn't
fucking shit."
say, but she said trans movement. She's referencing the movement. Imagine that if I said that, you could say roughly the same thing about the shooter. Imagine that she said, the civil rights movement did not use the same strategies as the trans movement. The civil rights movement didn't go in and shoot children. Would you think that's a fair tweet?
If there was a lot of people like,
No, just the one instance in that case. Assume.
I think shoot children is rough because I don't think there have been that many trans shooters yet. I'd be more comfortable with a general term like violence.
Had there been that many violent outbursts enough to characterize the trans movement?
For the amount of people supporting it, I think at this point, yeah. Without it, unless we're just waiting for it to ramp up to like full scale fucking whatever. Like I feel like at this point the support for that type of like violent action or that sort of like public deletion shit, I think is there. Yeah.
Well, public deletion.
I said like the
that's
massive
violent.
cancel culture and all of that shit. Yeah.
Cancel culture is violence.
I think you can make an argument that it's kind of like it, but that's why I said if you're gonna read, like that's not through public persuasion, right?
Is it violent or non-violent?
I don't know. None of it is violence. There is no violence except for the shootings and murders. If you're not murdering somebody, it's not violence, I guess. But like I said, this is largely going to be like unconvincing to me because if you're going to if you just want to like live in that one word of like, are people actually like murdering people? And that's the extent of which you're going to view like violence. One, nobody's reading her tweet that way, except for the most bad faith interpretations. And two, I think it's silly. I don't think she intended her tweet that way.
Characterizing
I think it's very
the whole movement as using violent means.
Do you think she?
That's what she's. Does that tweet fairly read say that the trans movement is characterized through using violent means?
It reads to me like they support violent means, which I think they do. When you read her tweet, do you think she's saying over 51% of trans demonstrations are violent? Is that how you're reading it?
I'm reading it as using that one of their main methods of persuasion is violence.
No, we need a number. Are you saying that that when she did this tweet, she's claiming that the majority, over 51% of trans
It wouldn't need to
activists-
be the majority. Wait, no one has ever said that the standard for determining something as violent movement or not violent movement is 51%. I agree. It could be some overwhelming acquiescence to a 20% violent, right? If you have an overwhelming support for a movement.
Okay, do you
where
think
20%
there's
of its
overwhelming
members are-
support in the trans movement right now in terms of the activists?
For
Is there
murder
overwhelming
and
support
assaults?
for
I don't have any evidence of that.
for violent demonstrations?
No, I don't have any evidence of that.
Okay, I feel like there is, but maybe we can.
Enough to call any more than MAGA.
More than MAGA? Probably not. I don't think so. Do you think I'm going to sit here and say that MAGA is a peaceful movement, though?
What about conservatives? I mean, if your level of abstraction and generality is such that trans movement is now being combined with Antifa and Black Lives Matter, then why even stop at MAGA and just say conservative? You want to stop,
Hold
your
on, wait.
level of
So show me that.
abstraction
What do you wait?
where-
Whoa. What do you mean? If there's
You
widespread,
just made them answer. You unironically answered Giga Chad yes when I said, should the trans movement answer for the crimes of Antifa and BLM? You said yes, Giga Chad.
yeah. Hold on. Do you
So
wait?
conservatives answer for all the January 6ers?
Yeah, no shit. Wait, hold on. Have you ever watched my stream before? Or I won't own you on this point, but like, yeah, I tell it to conservatives all the
seen it.
fucking time.
Heard about it.
That when they say things like, "Oh, January 6th isn't a big deal," or how many people are like, "Oh yeah, I like Trump, but I don't like this," it's like, no bullshit. You never call Trump out on your Twitters. You stand every fucking thing. Yeah, I say this to conservatives all the fucking time. Of course.
Conservatism in America today is a violent movement.
I'm pretty sure I call them a death cult because they are literally jumping off a cliff to die because they don't get fucking vaccinated.
And so are Democrats, right? Because they support trans and trans advocates.
I don't think the
So
Democratic
Democrats are a violent
establishment
movement, too.
largely does. I don't think they're at that point yet.
So the Democrat establishment is the only movement in this country that is not violent.
No, first of all, I don't know if I would characterize an entire movement as violent. It's probably going to be with respect to a particular issue, right? Like, for instance, are conservatives like violent when it comes to taxes? Probably not. Are conservatives violent when it comes to supporting things like January 6th? Probably. But I don't know if I would write off like an entire group of like 150 million people as all being violent without like giving this with respect to a more particular issue. That just seems like worthlessly broad.
Let me give you my frame, and you can attack it, or people can see what my frame is.
Go for it.
When I read this tweet, I think she's referencing a particular group of people in time and space, and that people is cabined under the label trans rights movement supporter, trans rights movement advocate. That those groups of people who would identify as those and who would take actions to further what they consider to be trans rights causes, those are the physical group of people that exist in the world today that she is referencing. And she is referencing their actions in time and space. And she is referencing things that they do to persuade. And the way she contrasts those people who existed in time and space to the people in the civil rights movement who also existed in time and space back in the day is to say that the people back in the day, they persuaded through nonviolence, and the people today persuaded through violence. That's what's going on here.
Oh yeah, I understand that. I think that's an insane reading of that tweet. I think a way more basic, way more obvious reading of the tweet is the civil rights movement had in it a primary goal of nonviolence, of peaceful activism. The trans movement of today does not, and they celebrate violent or otherwise obstructive acts that aren't just peaceful protests, with the example she gave being barricading that speaker in for 3 hours. I think it's a way more obvious read. I think it's insane to think that her characterization is like the majority of people or 20% of the movement are violent or violent murderers or attackers or whatever. I don't think that's
Supposing they had. Suppose that 80% of people supported that action. 80%
Supported
of people
what action?
Supported the barricade. So 80% of trans advocates,
Okay.
trans supporters, trans rights supporters. So that 80% of them supported that. They don't support any actual physical assaults in the terms of hitting someone. They don't support murders. They don't, but they do support that particular barricade. 80%. I'm gonna call that move, but everything else they do, let's say, they never actually assault anybody.
Event, if I understand that event correctly, my understanding is that that person, I don't think I'm gonna watch videos, it's been a while. That person was essentially, her and her staff, I think, were like chased into an office with demonstrators outside where they literally could not leave for 3 hours. I don't think that's an acceptable form of protesting. But again, if you want to like autistically quibble over like the definition of violence, I don't know if I'm gonna get you to agree with this. I wouldn't call it non-violent. But I mean, I don't know, like what, like I bet legally. What? Go ahead.
You think that people who support like O.J. Simpson and thought he's in the right, that they're violent people, or they're persuaded through violence? or people who like support.
I mean,
the other side
legit-
of the Rittenhouse debate.
It depends.
They-
Hold on, the OJ thing. It super depends. It could be right. There are some people that I don't even know what the percentage is given, but I imagine there's some small percent of black people that probably thought, you know what, OJ killed her, but the country's fucked over black people enough and enough white people got away with shit that fuck it. If OJ beat the charges, then he deserved it. And I'm sure there are some other people, like Fanatic I've talked to, that think that, like, you know what, I don't think he killed her. I think it was bullshit. The glove didn't fit. Like, enough stuff doesn't add up. It's not enough for a criminal beyond a reasonable doubt conviction. So it would depend on the. But if you support it, it's like, yeah, fuck it, black people killing white people, I'm all here for it. Then I would say, yeah, you support violence. But if you're somebody who's like, legitimately, there wasn't enough to convict him and he should walk free or whatever, then I would say no. But it depends on why. Sorry, you can bring up any other example, but like, I'm not gonna like have OJ thrown it together with like Rittenhouse or other stuff. I think it's way different.
Okay. I mean, that's just where we disagree.
Wait, what do we disagree with there?
On the tweet. I mean, I think that just because a movement, a group of people, a collection of individuals have a particular take or opinion on a action or like a thing that happened in the past, that doesn't mean that you can fairly characterize the methods of that movement as violent or non-violent. Just because they have a take or an opinion on, you would have to show a systemic and overwhelming acquiescence to that.
What would
degree
the
of violence.
overwhelm? Would like the vast majority of the speakers and representatives of the movement not count, or like let's say for instance,
it would factor in some. Go ahead.
Let's say for instance, let's say that trans shooter was in Tennessee, shot up a school. Let's say that I could show you like 10 prominent progressives that all said, listen, the trans shooter was just as much a victim as anybody else in the school. Would that be something that would like make you think like, okay, maybe this is.
That's not violence, is it?
Okay, no, yeah, we just
I disagree.
We super disagree.
Do you think that saying that the trans shooter is a victim is violence or endorsing what they did?
You're just like, you're harping on this like word violent. Do you think it's non-violence? Can you answer that? Do you think that's non-violent to support somebody that goes out and does a mass shooter and then call them a victim? Do you think that's non-violence?
To call a shooter a victim is not violent. That is correct.
Okay, all right.
Do you disagree? Wait, do you disagree that sympathizing with the shooter is not violent?
Maybe I would say it leads to violence, but like
that act of agreeing and that someone is a victim, including a horrible person, that is violent.
I guess the particular act itself wouldn't be, sure.
Okay.
Do you think that donating to a terrorist organization is violence? By your definition, it must not be, right? It can't be.
I would say intentional support for violence in terms of
donating money to somebody, that can't be violence. You're just donating money.
No. I think that certain levels of acquiescence and support, material support, to direct violence can absolutely be equated and be part of the consideration about whether a movement is violent.
Wait, then how is your position meaningfully different from mine? Or sorry, don't make a joke.
And I think you agree with this. There just isn't enough widespread violence going on for us to look at and say, look at all this acquiescence that's going on. The movement is by and large violent. It just
agree.
Doesn't exist.
I agree with that.
that.
Yeah, I agree with that. There isn't enough widespread violence, but there is widespread support for it among all of like the leaders of the progressive movement. That's unacceptable.
How would one go about knowing that?
I don't know, by consuming the media, by looking at when a story comes out and there's not at all condemnation and sometimes even sympathy for trans violent people and that there is no condemnation for it. I think that's enough for me to at least like want to look twice at it. I mean, I don't know, like, am I supposed to like poll all progressives to find out like what violent means? Like let's say I showed you a poll of that like 51% of progressives would be sympathetic towards like a trans mass shooter.
Would I think that the movement is violent?
Yeah.
By itself, just that, without any suggestion of a wider pattern of violence, I would say no.
What if 51% said that, and also 50% of the speakers on progressive platforms said that trans people need to arm up and be ready to protect their rights?
I think if we're approaching levels where there's widespread like armament of a group, and as well as outright endorsement of violence, and we're reaching like majority.
Well, not endorsement of violence, just sympathetic towards it.
Well,
not sure.
If I can chime in here.
Wait, hold on, before this gets totally.
I just want to say what you're describing. There's a lot of conservative individuals who are like, hey, keep your dirty hands off my AR-15. Arm yourself up. Get ready for what would you call these people who don't want to have an outright civil war? Let's say, assuming they're on good faith. Would you call the act of arming oneself violence? I'm not
would
sure
I
that it
call it
inherently is.
violent? No, but something that leads to violence, something I wouldn't support, something I would wholly disavow. Yeah, there are gun shops I'll never buy from again, and fucking they probably all do this. I'm just retarded. But there are gun shops that, like, I remember when Obama fucking would talk about certain things on the radio, they'd be like, "Oh, ammo half off. Make sure to buy everything before the president outlaws it." Blah blah blah. Yeah, that type of like defend your gun store affairs. Yeah.
In this country, in America, we give a lot of room for political hyperbole, for speech, and yes, even for speech that that could lead to bad results. It was you who just said that, you know, part of the fabric is saying things that some of America is saying things that some might consider to be
Yeah, and part of that right is basically violent speech. Yeah,
but there's always been what we've tried to have a bright line in this country, a line between violence and nonviolence. That no matter what happens, how are you know, the differences between peoples, the bright line that everyone has always tried to draw is characterizing people as being violent and nonviolent. And the characterization of a group as violent justifies all sorts of intrusions, right? If a group is violent, if a movement is violent, you better be putting warrants, you better be, you know, extra surveillance, you better be
No, hold on. Nobody's talking about criminal behavior. Being violent doesn't necessarily imply criminal behavior. No.
Violence in this country, a lot of violence in this country is criminal.
It can be, but you can also.
That we're talking about in this specific case, you'd agree it was criminal, wasn't it? Isn't it criminal to barricade and you know, to stop people from leaving forcibly?
It's probably some
unlawful
form of
force.
Sure. Yeah, well, here's the question. Then I'm curious if this is your stance. So then, would you say when you look at like Lauren Southern's great replacement stuff, or you look at Tucker Carlson's great replacement stuff, would you say that neither of them?
It's not violence.
None of them engage. You wouldn't consider that any form of violence whatsoever, or encouraging it. Oh, okay. I think we just
encouraging violence.
That's not violence. Encouraging
not
violence
directly?
is not. Well, you're running into the same problem I ran into, right? Because you don't want to call it nonviolent. Would you say great replacement rhetoric is nonviolent?
Spreading that message just because you disagree with it is I wouldn't call it violent. It might lead to violence.
Would you call it nonviolent?
Is Islam violent? That's the thing that you never answered from Lauren Southern.
Great replacement. Is great replacement violent, or would you call it nonviolent? Because you're saying it's not violent, which I guess I could agree. Would you call it nonviolent? It feels unsatisfying. It feels like there needs to be something in between, no? Because there's stuff that clearly leads to violence.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So like, I think that's going to be a value judgment on how close or proximate the ideology is to enacting violence. Maybe you'd say so. Like spreading a belief that all of them, you know, I don't know. You think about Rwanda. All of an ethnic group should be, they're rats, they're disgusting, they're cockroaches.
They're trying to genocide you. They're going to take away all your rights. They're going to take your children from you. You need to arm up. Yeah? Stuff like this.
So I agree with you that certain, one of the problems is defining what is on what, you know, whether or not it's so close to that line that we're going to consider that speech alone to be violent. But in this country, our priors are to have a great degree of tolerance for up to that line, and short of imminent calls and direct calls for violence, we're gonna stop.
Sure, and I agree legally, legislatively. I agree with you legislatively, but we need, no, I don't think culturally. Culturally, we defend speech that is, in some ways, implicitly violent. You have a right to do a KKK or a Nazi march down a street of a town. You have a right to do that. Would I call the KKK or Nazis recruiting or any part of them non-violent? I mean, maybe I wouldn't call it violent.
KKK getting a permit, burning a cross on a yard, you know, would you call that violent?
I don't know if I'd call it... It's closer to violent than non-violent. It seems like there's an area in between that we need a better word for, because I sure as hell wouldn't call it non-violent.
Okay, then I'm just going to end with this and say, whatever line that is, I don't think that we're close to it in the case of... I agree, there's some... I'm not telling you that there isn't any speech or any support or acquiescence that I wouldn't equate to some level of violence. At some level, at some closeness and proximity, at some intentionality, I'll grant you that. But I don't think we're even close to that in terms of the discourse and what the overall practice and methods of the trans movement has been in this country, which is legislation, ideology, spreading your message, entertainment. That's how they've been affecting the culture, not through violence.
Yeah, but it's
counter
gotten
to
a lot
what
of other
is
support
being
from stuff
implied.
through illegal hormones bought from other countries on shady online websites. It gets basically implicit support from mainstream journalists, or at least mainstream publications. The use of violence where a trans shooter is seen as a sympathetic victim rather than just an aggressor killing people for no reason. I mean, like, there's a lot of implicit support. The demonstration where the lady was barricaded in for 3 hours. I mean, I won't even rub the BLM stuff into it because, yeah, holy fuck. But, like, it seems like the appetite for violence is there and that the violence is righteous and justified.
You roping in the BLM thing is just, it's buying the Charlie Kirk and buying the Ian Miles Chong frame of the world, which is, this is what they're trying to do next. This is what, they want you to accept this. They want you to accept crime on the streets. They want you to accept that men can be women and women can be men. And it's all part of the they. And you accepting it and you giving them ground and saying, that the trans movement should answer for what you perceive to be the crimes of BLM, I think is
I'm not
is a
saying they should be
dangerous
right, but I'm
mistake.
saying that it's the same people. Of course it is. This is the same shit I've said that, like, if you walk up to me and you tell me that you believe in the Matrix, I can tell your position on vaccines. I know how you feel about Donald Trump. I know that you support Russia over Ukraine. I know how you, like, yeah, it's the same, like, groups of people. If you say that you supported, like, BLM, even the riots or whatever, I can probably tell you whether you think men and women should compete or trans women should compete in sports. I could probably tell you what you think about hormones for kids. I could probably predict, like, with like 80% accuracy, I could probably predict all these positions from people. Yeah, because we're very much like in two, like, pretty distinct groups on a lot of these things today. That's what it feels like, at least. I could be wrong, but I don't
Okay,
think
what
I
would
am.
it take for you to change your mind about the trans movement?
What would it take for me to? It's gonna trigger the fuck out of you, but probably more people like Anna, more predominant, like, progressive figures, stable progressive figures saying, like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't like this, and I don't support this. People like Sam Cedar, people like Hassan Piker, people like even Brianna Joy Gray, people like that come in and saying, listen, this is not okay. We can't accept this. We can't have this happening. It's not okay. That's what it would take to convince me. Disavowal from people that are, like, seen as figureheads of these movements.
Okay, so they get to the crazies get to define what the trans movement is, and if they don't change,
Those are the crazies.
perception.
Do you not think that there could be any figureheads for movements? Do you think these are largely just
Well,
headless?
well,
and
Biden doesn't count. Institutional Democrats, you're not going to count. You're never going to count what they're
because
saying. and their
institutional
anti-
Democrats aren't leading
You're not-
this. Actually,
Institutional
wait, hold on. I'm
Democrats
sorry. I'll
are-
give you some. If, like, Rashid Tlaib or AOC or whatever came out and was, like, very adamantly against it, then I would count that as something. But no, Biden and the establishment Dems aren't the ones that, like, lead this charge. Even though I wish it would have
They're
been a
the
more
one-
full-throated
they're-
disavowal, Biden at least said he didn't condemn the violence. He said he didn't support the violence. He condemned the
I
violence.
don't know what planet
Yeah.
you're on. The
Tell me.
people who are fighting against the trans legislation that's going on in Republican circles aren't the anti-vote people, aren't the democracy doesn't matter people. They're the people who are telling people they need to vote. They're precisely the opposite kind of intuitions.
We're not
that-
talking
that
about
you
fighting
perceive
against
them.
legislation right now, though.
No. But what I'm saying is they are part of the trans movement. Biden is, has there ever been a more trans positive president than Biden? No, there hasn't. He's enacting
you were to poll-
executive orders. Go ahead.
If you were to poll, I agree with you. But, like, if you were to poll, like, trans activists on whether or not they think Biden is doing a good job for trans activism, what do you think the majority of them would say? I feel like I've seen, I think I saw Vosh say this recently. I've seen a lot of people say it in regards to
I don't know.
Anna.
Do we have that?
Didn't the last trans creator literally just dump the Young Turks, who's already, like, critical of Biden? Like, do you think
But
Biden
here's
has
the-
these, like, trans activist
so,
friends?
So let's ask. If it's
Yeah.
the case that 90% of trans people approve of Joe Biden, that change your mind? Now are we going to give credit for Biden when he does things that are nonviolent? Are we ever going to give credit to moderates?
I think maybe we disagree on this part. I think the figureheads are important. Like, if it was because every single big person, here's my guess, probably almost with 100% accuracy, large progressive content creators online almost completely disavow President Biden. That's the feeling that I've had. If I listen to anything in the Majority Report, if I listen to like any, like, progressive, any of the huge fucking 100,000 plus tweets that I see, any, like, progressive leaders. Can you think of it? Are there any progressive leaders that, like, seem to give a lot of support to Biden? And not like, well, he's better than Hitler kind of way, but, like, actually support the
You're
administration?
the one who says that trans people are not defined by the Twitter people. That's what you've been saying for years.
I said
You're
they're-
saying-
I said they're-
Wait, I just want to finish this thought.
Okay, go ahead.
You would say, guys, I need you to realize most trans people are not like this. They're not like these people. And yet, when push comes to shove, you are letting the Twitter people define them, just like it would
Correct.
be the case to let the Islamists define Islam.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
Like you would yell at Sam
No,
Harris.
no. Hold on.
if
I
he
agree
said-
with you. This is an opinion that I changed my mind on, though, right? Because my last position was exactly what you're saying. That like it's not fair to define people based on what a small minority are doing. That was my prior position, right? But I changed this like about a year ago, and my position has changed too because I'm trying to figure out how can a small group of people define a majority. That doesn't seem fair. But what is actually happening is it's not the small group of people's action; it's the majority group of people's defending the action. So my position has changed to if the majority of people defend a minority of people, it might as well be a majority of people. And I think that's what we're seeing with these movements. It's not that a majority of these activists are violent; it's that a majority of them seem to have a full-throated support for the violence, and that's the problem. That's the issue. And that's why conservatives have gotten like so successful at demonstrating how crazy these movements are. It's not because everybody's violent; it's because everybody seems keen to support it.
So it is now your reverse position. It's now your position that the trans movement is defined by Twitter leftists.
It's defined by their figureheads. If you want to call all their figureheads Twitter leftists, I mean that's fine. If that's how you want to write them off. But
That's
I mean,
your
like,
frame of reference, and that's all you're considering is the opinions of the Twitter leftists.
do you think that Tucker Carlson speaks for like a large swath of the American people? Or do you think he's just he's a news pundit? Well, now actually he's not even Fox News, so he's also like a Twitter righty. Do you think that do you think Steven Crowder speaks for any amount of Republicans? Do you think the Daily Wire, because these are just internet YouTubers, right? Or do podcasters speak for the American people now?
Well,
Who
I
does?
have-
If it's not them, who does?
Well, you can point to broad measures of support as relates policies and actions taken in the real world. That is voting patterns to.
You don't
confirm
vote for
those
violent
fires.
riots. How
That
do
is-
I confirm that?
Okay, but then how can you make a assessment on the level of support for those riots?
Because I look and I see what all of the thought leaders in those spheres are saying. I haven't
so
polled
then it is the
America
case-
First fans on how they feel about Jews, but
It is
based on
the
what
case
Nick
then.
Fuentes
Okay,
says, I can
all right.
probably guess.
So it is the case that the trans movement is being defined in your mind, and all you're going to look to, or the thing that you're going to most look to, are the Twitter leftists that you see.
Yeah, I don't think that those figureheads can survive if they were so out of step with what their constituents believe. You acknowledge that, right? It doesn't make sense that a world exists where all of your largest leaders are saying something, but really nobody believes that. They just all happen to be the most popular people in that movement.
No, I don't think that that's the case. Just like there's a
Okay,
corner
wait. Okay,
market
yeah. I just
for-
to demonstrate because you keep making it sound like it's an absurd proposition. I'm trying to show you that what you're saying is absurd. You're like, do you really think that the most popular people that speak for these movements represent these movements? Yeah, I do. Yes. Unless there's some like huge bastion of progressive support somewhere that I'm missing. It's not Joe Biden for the activists. But if there is something else that I'm missing, feel free to tell me.
Yeah, I think that it's a mistake to think that the largest content creators in leftist space represent the leftist position in America, or I would say the left position in America. It's you who say that these people are largely irrelevant in the real world. Those are your
I don't
words.
say that. Those are my
Those
words from like 2 or 3 years ago. I don't say that anymore. What I've said over and over and over again over the past like 2 or 3 years is Twitter has become real life. I think I said that like a million times on my stream because it's true. More and more. I think I said that actually during the last election run because fucking Bernie Sanders had to actually come out and disavow his Twitter fans on stage. They were having impacts on his campaigns because they were so fucking ruthless online. Yeah, I've said that for years that yeah, it seems like Twitter has like, yeah, I agree. It's not real life, it's Twitter, but real life has become Twitter. It's like merged into itself.
Okay. All right. I mean, at the end of the day, and I'll leave it on this. I know I said that before. I think that the trans rights movement is a largely nonviolent movement.
Sure.
And I think that they persuade largely through nonviolence, just like the civil rights movement. Not to say that they're the same in every respect, but the civil rights movement persuaded largely through nonviolence, and the trans rights movement in this country persuades largely through nonviolence.
Okay.
Regardless of the fact that they don't have as much outward disavowal of the violence that you want to see, the core fundamental facts, that core fundamental fact, the consistency in their approaches to persuasion, being nonviolence, makes Anna Kasparian's tweet dumb as hell.
Gotcha. Okay, and then just 2 final things on that I know you'll agree with. You also agree that the majority of the people, you would never characterize the January 6thers as violent. You would never characterize Charlottesville as violent, right?
The individuals who
Gen
committed
6ers in
violence
general,
on
yeah.
January 6th?
The Republicans that
Yes,
support.
I would characterize as violent. I would characterize people who committed
Whoa,
violence
but
as
not the
violent.
majority of January 6th. Most of them didn't even go in the Capitol building. You can't characterize
People who-
Jan 6 as violent.
I don't characterize most of the people who were in Washington as violent. No, I don't.
Okay, and then you don't characterize like the Charlottesville march. That the only violent person there was the one that drove the car. Whatever.
People who committed violence.
Okay,
Do
but
you think
everybody
that's a
else there
crazy-
was.
Wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
You think it's what would it be? What kind of standard would that be? That people because they disagree with me on government, because they disagree with me about race, that somehow they're violent. That's the kind of attitude that you want to take. Disagreement equals violence.
I don't have a good word for it because most people won't like. Because I think intuitively most people understand it. I think even intuitively you come to understand it. Okay, I think you already did understand it. There exists a place between violence and non-violence that we need to have a word for. Most people just call it violence, but like that's why you're uncomfortable saying, or you should be uncomfortable saying that like Lauren Southern's old content that was completely non-violent, or that Tucker Carlson's current content is that's completely non-violent, or that like
so racism is
yeah.
violence, is what you're saying.
I mean, it's closer to violence than non-violence. I don't know if I would call it non-violence.
Okay, so then maybe you can have some sympathy. If what you're saying is racism is violence or something approaching violence, then do you have any sympathy for trans people who say transphobia is violence or approaching violence?
Depending
No,
on
you would
how
never
it,
grant that.
Wait, what do you mean? No, I would. Yeah, depending on how it plays out, of course. Wait, haven't I? There's almost a justification, arguably, for if you're a trans person and you live in a state where the government has said as an adult you can't get trans healthcare anymore. That's an insanely like aggressive. I don't know if maybe I wouldn't call it violence, but yeah, that's like as close to violence you could possibly get. Like imagine if a type 1 diabetic had the government saying we're taking away your insulin from you. Is that violence? Maybe I wouldn't call it violence, but it's about yeah, of course I would grant that. Yeah.
And remember when we had this conversation about the word terrorism, you're like, I'm so careful to apply the word terrorism to actions because if I say the word terrorism, that's going to justify an imposition from the state and all kinds of retaliatory activity towards the people I'm calling terrorists. You have, no problems whatsoever using violence because, that same dynamic isn't at play for some reason. I mean, what's going on in your brain?
Sure. What's going on in my brain is that it might be like a little bit. There might be some fuzziness at the edges for what we call violence or complicit in violence or supportive violence, but I would rather the fuzziness at the edges than this strange peaceful world we live in where the only violence is when somebody's actually laid a hand on somebody else or kidnapped somebody else. It seems to be that there are absolutely necessary steps before that are definitely need to be avoided. That if one person goes out and murders somebody and the entire rest of the movement is like, you know what, I actually think they're the victim. Is that violence? Probably not, but it is unacceptable. It's incompatible with our democracy, and it has to be stopped. So I don't know what you would call it. I guess you'd call it nonviolence.
It has to.
But there's got to be something else there that you have to be able to talk about, and that's what Anna's getting at in her tweet.
And everything else that's not even touching violence, where it's talking about gender pronouns and all the advocacy related to bathrooms and related to acceptance and ways to view. I don't know, the trans ideology, in other words, all that stuff, no matter how much you put on that scale of nonviolent advocacy, no matter how much lobbying is done, no matter how much of the agenda is being pressed in other ways, nothing can outweigh the lack of calling out these few instances of violence, your own characterization of violence, a few instances of violence. That insufficiency of calling out the very few instances of violence outweighs anything possible on the other side of the ledger.
Yes. Okay. I think that if you have a human body, if you go to the gym every single day, if you eat the healthiest diet ever, if you exercise, you sleep, you do every single thing that you need to. If a virus enters your body and your immune system is asleep, you can be 100% healthy in every single sense of the word, but that lack of immune system, you will die to the most harmless virus in the world. Same thing with if you've got a large movement, if I've got my whole chat and we donate money every month to fucking women's causes or trans causes, blah, blah, blah. If all of that happens, but I let transphobia run wild in my shit, I let somebody come on and say some shit like, fuck, blah, 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 and I'm like, it's kind of funny, but hey, whoa, we donate so much. I donated $1 million to trans charity. I can't be transphobic all the time. Come on. Yeah, I think you have to call out those problematic aspects of your movement, or they will define your movement. Yeah.
At this point, I'm getting talking points from the chat, and it's a really good
Give them the talk. Sure, hit me up with the talking points.
Sure.
Rabbit.
What about the police?
What about the police?
So we have a movement. Would you characterize the police as largely non-racist, largely non-corrupt?
To some extent, yeah.
Would you call all police racist because they don't speak out loudly enough against the instances of racism that exist? Of active intentional racism?
I don't know how many instances of active
an impossible
intentional.
standard.
Well, hold on. The police are not one thing. Polices are defined by like their fucking municipalities and their cities. There's not like the U.S. polices.
Okay, so now you want to put definite boundaries.
No.
You want to put definite boundaries.
But
so when it's trans, everything's allowed. BLM
because it's a
allowed,
national
Antifa's allowed.
because it's a national movement. Antifa is not your Antifa in Omaha. BLM is not BLM in Des Moines. Yeah,
conflation is okay when it's the trans advocates, but it's not okay for the police.
Well, hold on. It would depend on who we're talking about for the police too. I'm not, because when I'm holding the trans advocates responsible, I'm not holding every single trans person. Much the same with the police. I'm not holding every single police officer. But if you're like a police spokesman or you're a police person
The
and
Blue Lives Matter movement.
Sure, then I would hold those activists accountable, of course. The same way that I did, that I said it was disgusting that the NRA didn't come and speak out immensely against what happened to Philando Castile. Because if that was a white man, I think they would have been all over it. But yeah, I held them accountable. But the NRA is an activist organization. Police officers are not activists. They're just people doing jobs. I don't expect a normal trans person to have a take on trans violence or whatever, but I would expect an activist or a political pundit to. I don't hold these to the same standards.
The difference is I wouldn't call the NRA a violent movement, or that they do most of their persuasion through violent means. I would say the NRA does most of their persuasion through non-violent means, and I would say the same things about the trans movement.
Maybe, but I think it would depend. If there were a couple shooters, and the NRA like was saying that, well, this guy was driven.
You just said they did that. You just said that they did that with Philando Castile.
No, you don't even know what I was going to say. What?
You just said they did that. That
No.
they didn't call it out.
That doesn't make them terrorists, but I say you should call it out. But like, let's say for instance there was like a string of shooters, or even one or two shooters, and the NRA came out and they published a statement. They're like, the shooting is tragic. However, like this is what's going to happen if you infringe on people's Second Amendment rights. So the shooter thought his guns are going to be taken, so he felt like he needed to go out and like change the world. Blah blah blah. Yeah, I would be heavily critical of them. Yeah, 100%. Would I call it violence? Probably something approaching it. The same as I would these trans advocates. Yeah, of course.
Okay. But you wouldn't agree with a tweet that's like, these Second Amendment. You want to know the difference between Second Amenders and the Civil Rights Movement? You want to know the difference? The Civil Rights Movement, they use nonviolence, and these gun advocates, they use violence to persuade, or at least they endorsed it by not calling out with sufficient
I would absolutely say that. Hold on.
Oh
yeah,
my
wait.
God.
If Second Amendments are, and they already do kind of do this. If they were like, we need to arm up, we need to stockpile, we need to be ready to fight for our life, we gotta go and fight Congress, we gotta do all these things, and then like a shooting comes out, and somebody tweets out, back in the day, we fought for the Second Amendment in the courts. The Second Amendmenters that exist today are not like the ones of the past. In the past, we didn't accept things like mass shootings to defend our rights. They persuaded through nonviolence and winning with the ACLU in the courts and blah, blah, blah. I would defend that tweet 1,000,000%, of course. Wait, would you not? You don't think there'd be a material difference between fighting in courtrooms versus supporting mass shooters? Or at the very least, they're like, well, you tried to take a Second Amendment right. Like, yeah, that's why he did it, of course, and that's what happened. We should arm up because they're coming for our guns.
I'm gonna give you what you want. I would absolutely characterize that as a material difference. But the material difference isn't between persuasion that is violent or nonviolent. I would say one that is more acquiescent, but I wouldn't go so far. I think that violence should be more of a bright line, and I know that
Sure.
that there are hard cases, and you and I both agree that there are hard cases that you know what, you made me uncomfortable with some of your hard cases.
Sure, and you know what, and I can even grant you that, but then all I would ask is I need a word that's not violent or nonviolent, because there has to be some, right? That I don't. Hold on, don't get triggered, okay? But do you remember the one word? The stochastic terrorism word?
Yeah.
Yeah, there has to be something to describe speech that invariably takes you to violent stages and implicitly supports it around you that I guess we don't call violence. What would you call that?
Yeah, but I agree. We should have a better vocabulary for that, and maybe that could apply to the thought leaders in the trans rights movement. But I argue for, and I think you should argue for strenuously, that the bright line on violence be maintained, that it only includes really direct calls, really direct material support for violence and violence itself, and doesn't include the kind of implicit understanding or acceptance, that we put that in a separate category. And if that were the case, I think I would be better aligned with your
sure,
messaging.
and there is a world where I can agree with you, but I don't think I don't think anybody is running with this strict of a definition.
Usain 100%. I agree with Anna.
Yeah, because
and
I agree
not
with what you.
making that
I think that
distinction.
the intention of her tweet, I think most people understand it the way that I'm reading it. I think that her message is pretty clear with the way that she's saying it. That today's movement seems to be largely supportive of violence. They seem to largely be supportive of it. I think that's probably true. It absolutely was true during the BLM stuff, and I know you don't like to bring that up. But like,
if there was a survey
Mm-hmm.
taken among trans people, where 16, let's raise it up.
I don't know, real
75%.
quick. I don't know if it would be a survey of trans people. I think it would have to be
Trans-
like activists. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Among the trans rights advocates, and people who identify themselves as trans rights advocates, which could be a big denominator, right? Just like Second Amendment advocates could be a big denominator.
Guys that own guns, basically, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So among those people, if a poll was taken that showed that, do you agree with the following statement? Strongly agree, disagree, whatever. Violence is justified in with respect to the trans movement, and 80% either said strongly disagree or slightly disagree. Would you say that your opinion is the same?
If it was it would move me in the other direction. It would. But the question that I would have then is, if that was the broad feeling among those people, why is every single thought leader and pundit, why do they all seem to be lockstep? What are they missing in the audience here? That would be confusing to me.
Yeah, I think that I think you've noticed that radical stuff is like a cornered market for it. And so even if it doesn't represent the vast majority of people, which I think is the case for Bernie people, right? Bernie people don't represent the vast majority of Democrats or left-wing people in the country. They don't. But there's a very big market for that kind of content, because there's a lot of people who are highly politically activated who are looking for that content, right? Just like your demographic might be extremely loyal, but it's nonetheless a small minority. So I don't think that.
Yeah, but it's a small. I
one-to-one.
mean, like, we're talking about like Bernie supporters are just Bernie supporters. That's a broad group. I think activists is a tad more narrow of a group.
Okay.
But yeah. Fuck. I had one more question.
Yeah.
Oh, what are the words you would use to describe? I don't know if you saw that AJW video, but when they misinformed in such a way that. Well, not only that, but that it
oh.
seems like there was a shooter, I think a black shooter, that was basically repeating verbatim the Young Turks. Jimmy Dore was on their show with his talking points. He's basically repeating them like verbatim. What would you call?
I wouldn't call the initial statements by those people violence.
Okay, yeah, but then what do you call that then? You don't like the stochastic terrorism term, right?
Because I'm concerned about the same things that you are. That when you originally brought your concern about me applying the word terrorist to certain January 6th individuals, you were concerned about that term being misused to widely characterize a group inaccurately and with real life consequences. That was your criticism of me applying the term terrorist to like certain people who committed violence on January 6th. And I think that criticism, I don't agree with its at base. I just disagree as applied in that case. I think that it accurately describes those individuals, but I don't disagree with the broader criticism, which is do not use terrorism in such a way that it encompasses everything, or where its meaning start, because then it really becomes the case that you're going after people who shouldn't be going after, and you're in a sense you're radicalizing the reverse, right? If you're saying that the trans movement is violent, or you're using rhetoric that would establish that or lend credence to that, in a sense you're doing the same thing with stochastic terrorism on the other end.
I agree with you.
Which is what you're engaged in, I would argue.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, okay? But the one...
I don't think you're a stochastic terrorist.
No, hold on. In this sense, I might, but there's a thing that you have to agree with that I don't even think you've considered. And what you're not considering is the fact of the matter that maybe they have gotten more extreme. Maybe that, for instance, let's say it was the case that next year, every single week leading up to the election, there was another shooting where 3 or 4 people were killed in left-leaning spaces by conservatives, right? Yeah. And let's say that people started to say, like, the Conservative Party has become like a party of terrorism, right? Now, for January 6th, would I accept that? Probably not, right? I don't know if it's fair to consider that broad of a, but like if the attacks became that frequent and their rhetoric was leading to that, and it was enjoying broad support in the Republican Party, like at that point, all the arguments that I used before, well, you hold on, you don't want to. That's impacting so many people. You like, well, yeah, but it's kind of true, right? It is the possibility that the fact of the matter could change, that it brings that into alignment. That I would say, yeah, right. And I think that I worry sometimes. Yeah, go ahead.
But then the problem is, I just think the evidence shows the MAGA movement, the January 6th type people are so much further along, and you were unwilling to call them terrorist and label that movement terrorist affiliated. You were unwilling to do it in that instance.
Well, but that,
you
hold
are
on,
willing
to be clear,
do
that
more or
had to
less similar
do
things.
with like intent and everything too. But I changed my position on that once the FBI conviction started to come out and the data came out for the Proud Boys. Because I said that's what you needed. You like I wasn't that back. You needed to show some sort of like coordinated action rather than protesters that happened to meet a place. And once that
was another
information,
conversation about cuckoo.
oh, that was another conversation about who?
Yeah, because there was always violence there, and it was always, I think, ideologically informed. But you were hesitant to label everyone there terrorism or terrorist acquiescing. I think probably for good reason. I wouldn't call all MAGA supporters a terrorist movement. That's too far. Calling all MAGA or all conservatives who support Trump violent.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
You agree with that?
No, I agree with you that it's probably not a good idea to call all those.
But like that, I would just say in terms of comparing the where the MAGA group is at is way further down the line than the trans movement. They're way further in terms of like talking about revolution and acquiescing and all that, and like, we should shoot left, and like good, like all those dials are turned up, I would say, extra for the conservative MAGAist in United States. But I wouldn't call them all violent. I wouldn't call it a violent movement today, and I wouldn't call it a terrorist movement. I don't think you would either. And if that is true, then I think what logically follows is the trans movement should be deserving of that grace. I
guess I would have to spend more time watching some conservative media to figure out what their responses are to like right-leaning violence, right-leaning shooting. But I might agree and say that I would characterize some of the speech as violent, but you just don't like that word violent. I think we.
No, but you wouldn't say that like the movement is violent, or that they are violent because they acquiesce to that violence, even though their dials are turned up.
I think it super depends. Like it. I'm trying to think of like. Do you remember that one guy that like mailed out like pipe bombs and shit? Mm-hmm. That like if
Allegedly.
there was allegedly, was that not true, or is
they
that
don't
still
even,
worth it?
a lot of conservatives don't even believe that, or they think that even if they did, maybe it would be justified if you go into the most radical circles. I mean, if you go onto the Donald.win or whatever,
sure,
everything there is, and if you talk to people about taking back your country, all that stuff, I think is way further down the line than the trans advocates. They're not talking about that stuff. They're not the ones who are saying like we need a revolution in this country, that we need like. Come on, approximately the right wing in this country is closer to that standard, in my opinion, at least the MAGA element
hold on,
of
yeah,
it.
if you're,
we wouldn't call it a violent movement, right? We wouldn't call it a movement that is largely
I'm agreeing. We're circling the drain here, but I don't know if I would call, because like you would agree then the Nazi Party and the Ku Klux Klan in the United States as they exist today, they're not violent, right?
They're not. I wouldn't say that they're violent movements.
Yeah, I agree with you. But would you really call them non-violent? That seems really deeply unsatisfying.
If I do, I'm taking a normative position that their speech and their racism is violence or something.
There's no. Does it really have to be that binary? You're either violent or non-violent. It's like A or B. Like there must be some stages of that just seems like, just let that sink in. Okay, hold on, because I want this separated to show you.
Yeah.
Let's let that sink in. So you would say that like Pisco would say, the Nazis and the Ku Klux Klansmen in the United States are non-violent. I would call them that. They're non-violent. That just seems so unsatisfying.
Yeah, I think that like we should have other vocabulary to describe their movement, and if they're actually advocating for genocide, I don't think I would call them non-violent. If they're advocating directly for violence, I wouldn't call them necessarily non-violent. But there are a ton of groups in this country that are calling for like revolution, where their political positions almost by necessity entail some level of violence.
Yeah, I agree. Those are but now would you so what you just said, because I'm trying to trap you, because I'm going to say the same thing about the trans
I know.
movement. Would you say that somebody who, because this was like my definition for like stochastic difference. So we talked about like the Great Replacement. My issue with the Great Replacement was that it basically necessitated violence. You're being replaced, your elected representatives aren't going to listen to you, voting doesn't matter, and they're going to invade and kill and rape you. So like, what do? You have to be violent. That's basically all you can do, right?
Well, then you're calling Lauren Southern violent.
Yeah, her past speech, of course I would. Yeah, no shit.
Then
But the term I would
if
use back
someone's
then
violent,
is
you have
like,
to stop them. You have to-
yeah, I
you have to
agree.
stop-
Yeah, I agree. You have to stop them. Yeah, of course. Do you think that's like is that a controversial
that's
statement? Like you have
exact-
to stop people that are basically walking people to the cliff?
But how? Okay.
Or sorry, go ahead.
But that I don't think that maps onto the level of grace and the kind of window of tolerance that this country accepts. That there's a window of tolerance for things approaching violence, that it has to cross some threshold.
Legally,
And-
I agree, but we're not
So,
talking
like,
just legally.
if someone puts up a Nazi flag, I don't think you're gonna say that's violence. They wave it around, and like, and a lot of people consider the MAGA hat to be violence. Do you consider that violent when you see those kids?
I think
who
the
are
MAGA hat is different.
wearing-
That we'll say the Nazi flag. Would I consider somebody flying a Nazi flag outside their house? Would I consider that violent? Maybe not. But would I call it non-violent? I don't think I would ever say that.
I think I would call it nonviolent.
Okay. That's a
I
brave
don't,
position.
otherwise, I'm married to everything I disagree with fundamentally to a certain magnitude is violence. If I can draw
What
a
about
line
so when
between
people
that and,
say
like,
when all the lefties say things like political speech is violence or racism is violence, you would say none of
that's
that.
what
is
you're
violence.
saying. That's what it feels like you're saying.
Well, yeah, because I think to some extent that's kind of how the world works. But you're saying that for you, violence is literally only an explicit call to violence or somebody actually attacking somebody.
I think so. I think that all the kind of implicit stuff that we should have a different term for, as you say, and we should not accept it that it be called violence for the policy reasons that you outlined. in our
No one is
terrorism
talking
discussion.
about making it illegal. Like to,
No. But for policy reasons related to just the culture, like, and our speech and radicalization and the fear of the other side ratchet. That if you're referencing things that are not behind this bright line of or this window of tolerance, you are in essence radicalizing the other side because you're saying, look, these trans advocates, they're violent. You need to
but
do
I agree.
something.
But I would say it's okay for that type of radicalization. I'd be fine with that. Like if
You're
people
okay
listening
with
to me, yes, if people listening to me are radicalized against like Nazis, yeah, I would say that's good. You should be radicalized against people that fight against liberalism, that have a massive intolerance for people in the country and are calling essentially implicitness to violence, right? Yeah, you should be intolerant of like Great Replacement stuff or that. Yeah, I would say yes. I want people to be.
It's not going to turn out the way you think. Using that rhetoric as against people who I don't think it's fairly applied to, you're never in control of it. And what ultimately happens is, it's not the case that they just sit down and are more thoughtful about it and are moderate in how and they're just saying, okay, we'll be transpositive, but we just won't advocate for the barricade stuff. That's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is these people are violent. They're doing all this. That's we need to stop them. We need to stop what they're doing to our children. We need to stop this movement.
Yeah, but I think
That's what
that's where we're at already. That's where we're at now. So then
you're contributing to it, I would argue.
No. The left has gotten us there. Now the answer, because there's two things I can do. I can go, no, guys, that's all fake, in which case nobody will take me seriously because the actions of the left have ramped up in aggressiveness in terms of rhetoric and everything else. Or two, we can say, hold on. The temperature on the left is way too high. We need to turn it the fuck down. But then you're standing here saying like, well, hold on. If you say the temperature's too high, you're helping to bake the
Don't
cake.
give me this toy voice.
That's what you're saying. That's what you're doing. You're saying if the temperature's too high, you're helping to bake the cake. That's not true. They turn the temperature up on themselves. You have to be able to speak out against it, which is why I'm saying you're saying what would it take to convince
You're
you?
turning the temperature. Your response is, Giga Chad, turn the temperature even higher.
No,
That's your
my response is acknowledge the temperature is too high and turn it the fuck down.
No, because when you're calling them violent, you're turning it up. You're not going down. You're not going to, hey guys, chill out. Anna, I think that you're right. They should call it violence, but come on, don't call them a violent movement. This is stupid. But what you're doing is 100% agree. They are violent or they support violence. That's what you're doing. You're doing the Giga Chad.
It's not the Giga Chat. I think it's important to do it. I think there are people that'll see it. There are people that I've gotten, the emailers, right? And I'm sure for Anna too, where people are like, oh, hey, you can support trans rights and not be an insane fucking lunatic. Oh, you can support trans rights and not say that like cis people should be fucking killed or make fun of blah, 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 or something. I think it's important to have those figures in any type of movement because they do turn the temperature down. I don't think they're
You think
causing
I'm
these
an unreasonable person?
Sometimes. Only when you disagree with me.
Do you think that my reading of the Anna tweet is an unreasonable reading of
Yes,
the
I
tweet?
do. Yes. I think my reading is far more reasonable. Unironically.
Okay, even if you think yours is more reasonable, given that, do you respect my intelligence?
Yeah.
Do you think that it's possible that she should have been more clear?
Yeah, I mean, you can always be more clear on Twitter, sure. But also, I'm not going to give, like, every tweet I see the least charitable fucking reading ever. I try to read, even for fucking Hassan and Vashar, I try to read in terms of, like, oh, what do they probably mean when they say this?
No, you don't, dude. If Hassan had tweeted something largely the same about the conservatives in this movement, you're gonna tell me that you would say 100% agree with this, by the way, because the conservatives are way too accepting of.
I feel like you got
Of
to.
violence.
I'm pretty sure it was yesterday. I
wouldn't.
literally said Republicans were a fucking death cult. You got to pick a different example, okay? Because I probably would be on board with it. But no, I mean, like, again, even for Hassan, like, if he says some dumb shit, I usually try to get
I
the
think it's
context around
gotten
it.
personal for you, Steve.
Okay,
think this is personal.
That's fine. You can think that. But hey, listen, when these things become less and less popular in the United States, when all the trans shit gets rolled back and everybody's standing there scratching their heads like, wow, how did we lose? We had our control on all the levers of culture and society. I mean, you guys have no one to blame but yourselves. Like, but I mean, I don't know what to say. At the end of the day, it doesn't affect me. I don't need hormones. Except for the ones I get fucking your mom. Yeah, I literally defended Hassan for calling people shit skin. Jesus Christ. That's an explicit racial slur for Indians.
What does that have to do with anything?
Because I was willing to look at the context around what he said.
Oh, that you're open-minded about people you don't disagree with.
Yeah, generally
I
I'll
think
try
by
to.
and large you are. I think by and large
Even
you are. But
yesterday,
I
that
think
tweet, there was a
100%
tweet.
agreement.
There was a tweet that triggered me yesterday about some lady tweeting about like Miles being with a white girl in the fucking Spider-Man thing, and I was about to retweet it and blow her up, and I was like, well, maybe it has to do with the story, or I missed something or whatever. And then I scrolled through her Twitter and I found it was just because she was white. I was like, okay, well, fuck this bitch. So I did my homework first.
All right. I think people should commission those studies on trans advocates' support for violence. And
True.
if it were the case that some wide majority condemned it in a study that where you respected, I guess, the institution that it was commissioning the study, I think that that would push you a little bit, right?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, definitely have an impact
All
for
right,
sure.
all right,
Yeah.
all right, all right. Listen, buddy, I think that we should have reasonable disagreements. I don't hold it against you. I just
I
think
hold it
100%
against you
is-
every time. I
Do
hate
you?
No, I'm just kidding. I love you, buddy.
All right, man.
Careful.
Keep it real.
Wait, Steven, please go. Before you guys go. Okay.
Okay, you need
Are
to
you
turn your
quiet?
microphone up like 12,000%.
Well, it's a new fucking mic and it's like.
Oh my God, you have an SM7B, don't you?
How'd you know?
Yeah, because
How the fuck
you
did
don't
you
have
know?
it. It's okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. So, real quick, somebody in chat pointed out, and I don't know if you saw it. Steven, would you categorize the pro-life movement in the United States as a violent movement?
At
Given-
times, absolutely.
Okay,
When there
I
was
should
that, when there
clarify.
was that one person that went in and like hacked up that fucking abortion doctor and shit,
Right.
and people were like, "Well, you know, if you're gonna commit abortions, blah blah blah." Yeah, of course.
No, don't miss me with that at certain times bullshit. I'm talking about using the Anna Kasparian Destiny standard.
Yeah.
Are they a violent movement?
If she would have tweeted that about the pro-life movement, like within the days or weeks after that happened, then I would say, yeah, that's a fair thing. Yeah.
Why the days or weeks after? What?
Yeah, why does that matter?
Why does it matter what's happening with a movement when you tweet about a movement? Because the events that
Do
are
these
happening
instances? Do these attacks?
Yeah, the instances, the things that are happening, and the way that people respond to them are defining the movements. Yeah, if
You're
Anna would've
weighing
tweeted-
them so high. The recency is so high.
Yeah,
It
wait,
seems
hold
out of
on.
Proportion.
Yes, of course the recency is high. Would I say that the Democratic Party is the party of slave owners since they were against the civil rights movement, Pisco?
Oh my God.
No, come on, of course the recency is
I agree
gonna
you
matter.
Wait. I agree that you discount things in the past, but I think the amount of emphasis and the amount that you're weighing the singular incident, I think, is too far. It's like you weren't like tomorrow. You're not gonna like. Let's say that a trans advocate saves a puppy and calls for
Yes,
and calls
yeah.
for,
Anna,
like
Anna Kasparian and Destiny will not tweet. I changed my mind about the trans movement. It is the
Yes.
most or the least violent movement
never
in the
do
history of
that.
social movements.
if a prominent trans advocate went out and said, you know what, guys, I retract.
Hold
what I
on,
said
this
about whatever."
this argument is just ridiculous. Time is an important factor in terms of how you view anything.
Yeah, but you don't weigh the other way. You don't. If someone came out and did something so
Wait,
very
you
laudable and brave,
you do in every single sense of the word, Pisco.
no, you wouldn't. If
I would.
Trans. If Vosh
If somebody
came out
was
tomorrow,
like, I'm addicted to alcohol or I'm addicted to heroin, versus somebody said,
No.
I was addicted 10 years ago, yeah,
no,
of
you're
course,
not
I'm going to
following
weigh
me.
these things
Wait,
way
you're trying to
differently.
avoid this. You're trying to avoid this, and it was a great point from Ruminate. Props to Ruminate.
Okay, go ahead.
And I'm I'm taking it
So,
home.
okay, make this good. Go
If
ahead.
Vosh came out tomorrow, if Hassan, and Hassan came out tomorrow, both of them, and said, you know what, violence should always be condemned, you would not say, you know what, the trans rights movement is like the civil rights movement. They both
No, wait,
use
hold on.
nonviolence to persuade.
Not,
you would never do
wait,
it the other way.
Wait. Not in that one instance, but if that continued over some period of time, yeah, of course I would change my mind on it. Yeah.
So can without.
Wait, hold on. Acknowledge that.
I don't know if this is asking you too much, but like, what are the instances?
I want Pisco to acknowledge
No,
that.
Pisco, don't.
That reasonably, that I would change my mind. Yeah, if Vosh started to do this thing like, guys, the genocide should need to stop. We got to stop talking about this. Okay, listen, it's not. You can't do this. This is not good. We don't support these. Blah blah. Yeah, if he started to do that, yeah, after a few months or whatever.
Process
Yeah, of course
one
I
man.
would.
Oh my, like
No,
I just don't know
obviously,
what to say.
but if Vosh, okay, I'm sorry, do I need to name every single progressive figure? Yeah, if Vosh, if the majority report, if David Beckett, if all these people started saying, then yeah, I would change my opinion. Yeah, of course. And the recency would be weighted because recency in time shows you where somebody's currently at. Yeah.
God, okay, I need to send a message to all these people and be like, everyone come out tomorrow and say we condemn violence, and then you're going to change your entire position on the trans rights movement.
I mean, like,
If
hold on,
all
you're
the people you just mentioned
hold
all
on,
said
wait.
that, you
You're
would change
acting,
your mind?
You're acting in bad faith now. Okay.
No, how?
Because obviously, one statement one time does not make a trend. But if you got all of those people to come out and do it, and then in 3 months they did it again, and then if an event happened and all of them came out, they're like, yeah, we don't support them, then yeah, actually, I would change my mind. Yeah, that's how that works. Yes. I base my mind on the actions of the people that I'm evaluating. Yes.
Someone needs to get in touch with them because that's all right.
But no,
Okay,
but they
yeah,
wouldn't
well,
do it. We've already seen examples. They won't condemn that violence in the same way. They'll lie about it. They'll lie by omission. They'll make shit up about it, and then they'll kind of brush under the rug and move on to the
'cause
next thing.
you're also included in the denominator all the BLM stuff. Did
yeah,
they
I mean,
lie about? Did they lie or condemn the trans shooter?
It seemed like there wasn't very much interest in it. I would have to check the specific reporting, but I do know that a lot of there was at least one big commenter or one big thread that exploded where somebody was saying the trans shooter was a victim too. Does anybody remember who specifically said that?
People say that about Hitler, bro.
Oh my God! And do you think people that say that, would you call them bad people? Hold on, no, wait, Pisco. Wait, Pisco. What a great example. If somebody said Hitler was a victim too, would you say
You think
that?
Kanye? You think Kanye's a bad person?
Right now he is. Yeah. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Haven't you
Listen, bro,
made some similar sympathetic remarks about like the MAGA movement as well?
Yes,
the fact
you
that they've been
absolutely have.
victimized by Trump's cult of personality.
Yeah, of course. I think
Okay,
you
then,
can argue that about
what's the difference?
Wait, your statements are so wild. Hold on. If somebody
Wait a minute.
rapes a child and they were raped as a child, I can simultaneously be sympathetic towards the victim and I can condemn morally his actions. You understand that, right?
Yes, but you just cited an example about the trans shooter where some unnamed progressive thread in which somebody said that the trans shooter was a victim.
Is this
as
where
well.
we're going to
That's
pretend
not mutually
that this isn't-
exclusive from
Okay,
the
I
idea
didn't
that
know
they're
I
also a
needed, so I
perpetrator.
wasn't ready to like have the sources pulled up for this for
You
everything
agree
that
it's
we
not
fucking-
mutually exclusive.
No,
It's not
yeah, I
mutually
don't think it's mutually. Yeah, I think there is reasons to feel sympathy for basically every single person who enacts violence. Usually, when people are violent, that's not a normal human state. Usually, some fucked up shit has happened to get you there. That could be rioting, it could be rape, it could be thievery, it could be Nazism. Yeah, usually something happens
So
to put you in
if
that
someone was
position.
like, I feel bad for Jeffrey Dahmer. He's a victim too, to be born with the brain he had. I mean, like, it must have been so awful being Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, imagine not having any emotions. I pity him. You'd be like, oh, yeah, they support Jeffrey Dahmer and cannibalism.
I mean, it's gonna depend on how that's phrased. If somebody's saying, like, for instance, like, if somebody's saying that he goes out and he eats a bunch of people, and then somebody's like, we need to remember that he's a victim here too. Then I'm probably like, that's a little
It
bit.
sounds
sus.
like
Especially
wildly
if they're from an
influential people on Twitter should be very like precise with their words, right?
No, because I'm not condemning people based on tweets. I'm
No,
talking
not you,
about,
Anna. Anna, Pisco made this point earlier.
I'm not
that
condemning. No. I'm saying that there are hundreds and hundreds of hours of these like progressive commentators. The problem isn't that just like one guy one time had one bad tweet. There's a consistent line of rationale given by this group of people.
Well, I don't know. I think if you were charitable with this person, you'd be like, well, it's clear if we're going to take the best faith approach, she wouldn't be advocating for killing children. I think she's advocating, and she can understand the psychological damage that's associated with
the
whatever.
cycles of abuse
Like,
and social pressure.
I'm not saying that I endorse that sentiment, by the way. I did not have that sentiment when that news story came out. But are you really reading that in the best way faith possible, where you think that it's tacit support for the actions taken by that shooter?
I think depending on how you phrase it, I think it can be. But like hold on. No. This isn't just like summarize what they said. This is like the way that you phrase things and the type of speech that you give is going to be incredibly important. And hold on, I need to finish this. You know this. If I were to tell you I got departnered from Twitch because I support people's right to defend their businesses, you would call massive cap on that, wouldn't you?
Oh,
or would you
I
say?
I
Or would you say
absolutely
that's
would call
yeah.
massive cap.
Okay,
I
yeah,
absolutely would
that's
call massive
essentially what I said, right? But
That's what I'm saying with Anna.
okay, but Anna's tweet was not as inflammatory as my Rittenhouse
No,
statements.
I'm not saying it's the same level of inflammatory.
Sure. Wait. Hold on. But I'm not in it. I'm trying to show you that you saying like, well, you can do this thing, right? Sure, but the way that you phrase things is going to be incredibly important for discerning like the intentionality and the other web of things going on with that statement.
Here's my prior. If
Tell
Anna
me.
wanted to say that trans rights advocates should be more condemning of violence, why didn't she say that?
Because I think that the issue right now is holistically the civil rights movement was a movement of nonviolence. The trans right movement is not a movement of nonviolence. It doesn't seem to
The
be
movement
that.
of violence.
I thought you said that
You're
earlier,
not,
though.
it's not binary. Like, just because somebody isn't violent doesn't make them non-violent. I think that non-violence, like, is an explicit call to non-violence. You seem to think that non-violence is people that aren't violent. I think there's a distinction to be made there, but I don't have the word for it. I can't give you the word for it. But
So Stephen, go
ahead.
just so I understand correctly, you're not saying that the trans movement writ large is violent, but you're also not saying that it's non-violent.
I wouldn't
It's some
characterize it
sort
as
of-
non-violent.
It's in between violent and non-violent.
I see. Okay.
The rhetoric and everything that like the states are coming for your children, your rights are being taken away. There was that stupid fucking map put out by fucking UNICEF or some shit. I don't even fucking know, saying that like these states like what do they say? Fuck, was it that the United States is not like a safe place to live or something anymore if you're LGBT or whatever? Like these types of statements combined with the whole like get armed and blah blah blah. Like again, I certainly wouldn't call it non-violent. Maybe calling it violent isn't fair, but I definitely wouldn't call it
Saying it's
non-violent.
not a safe place to be an LGBT in America is possibly not non-violent.
Sure, the same way saying you're not safe as a white person in a country with a lot of brown immigration in conjunction with other statements is definitely not a non-violent thing to say. The Christchurch shooter didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't
but
because
it's not a-
the Christchurch shooter didn't come out of listening to a whole bunch of people advocating for non-violence or a whole bunch of non-violent speech.
It's acquiescing to violent speech. That's what you're. But whatever term that is. Well, if you agree that there should be a spectrum, then I would say that you should push for that, and you shouldn't accept the binary, because then you're accepting the binary, and your message is going to be lost. And Anna should be extremely clear, as you just said, that you should be clear in when you're making inflammatory tweets or whatever. If she wanted to say something straightforward like they should not acquiesce to violence or they should call it out more.
Okay,
she
hold on.
should
Let me
have said
rephrase
that.
this in a tweet. If I add this word, tell me if it's okay. The civil rights movement did not use the same strategies as the trans movement today. They didn't barricade speakers they disagreed with in a class for 3 hours. They persuaded through nonviolence and showing America their humanity. Okay, and then comma, as opposed to the trans movement that seems to implicitly endorse violence, or
I still
that
think
would
it's a bit overbroad, but
that's
that would be
overbroad
better.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they
that seems how about it seems to enable violence?
I just want to finish
Yeah,
this
go
part.
ahead.
The trans rights movement, you agree, largely persuades through nonviolence. And so the thing that you're trying to contrast is not how they persuade.
I
It's
think
whether or not they accept violence or not.
I just
That's how you're
had a brain blast moment. Okay, never mind. I think I just saw a huge disagreement that we had. Okay, in your head, not being violent to you is the same thing as nonviolence.
I think not being nonviolent
No. Okay.
is violent.
Okay, but do you think that not being violent is nonviolence?
Not being violent is nonviolence.
Because I don't agree with that. I think nonviolence is an explicit call to being peaceful, is an explicit call to nonviolence.
So you think there's
Okay.
like passive nonviolence and active nonviolence, perhaps? Like there's a default
I
state
wouldn't.
where you're
I
not
wouldn't
being.
call. I would say that they're not violent, but I wouldn't call
Okay,
it nonviolent.
I can
think-
agree that that adhering to nonviolence as a philosophy is different than having a movement where it's nonviolent. But she's talking about their methods. You say persuaded through nonviolence, right? The persuasion of what, right? They're not persuading of nonviolence.
Whoa,
They're
wait, no.
talking about-
They said the same strategies as the trans movement. The civil rights movement's strategy was one of nonviolence. The trans movement strategy is absolutely not one of nonviolence.
I mean, if nonviolence is a given in their movement because it's there's never a question of violence in terms of enacting violence, then is that something that you like? That's a mark against the trans movement because they don't explicitly say it.
Given the speakers' positions on all of the other violent actions and everything, and given the type of rhetoric and everything that has engulfed these movements, the rhetoric of we're being genocided, they're coming for our kids, we need to arm up, like, you know, the trans shooter was a victim too, like all of these things in conjunction with all taken together, no, I would not say that it's a movement of nonviolence. Would I call it violent? Maybe not. Do they seem to
maybe.
enable violence?
You're very happy to say
because
you're
really
because
to you violent means 51% of people need to be punching
no,
people in the
no,
street.
No, I already denied
That's what
that.
you
But,
seem
like,
to be thinking.
I'm asking about your take. So you're very quickly able to say you're not going to call it a nonviolent movement, but you're going to say maybe on whether it's a violent movement. Explain that.
Yeah, because I don't think they're a binary, and I don't even think you're comfortable calling them a binary, although you seem eager to.
I think they're largely
I'm sorry.
nonviolent.
You were comfortable with that, but I'm not agreeing with you, and most people won't agree there. Most people won't say that the Christchurch shooter, everything he read was nonviolent, and then he just became, through like abiogenesis, he became violent out of nowhere, right? There's some sort of violent enabling speech, some sort of stochastic terrorism, some sort of words or ideas that almost inexorably lead a person to violence. Maybe you wouldn't call it violence, but I wouldn't call it nonviolence.
You should accept your own advice on the terrorism discussion, and when you're talking about things where reasonable people, which I think you agree me and Ruminate are reasonable, unless you think we're like libtard hacks, which you might think also. If reasonable people...
He's terribly quiet at the moment, so...
Oh, God.
I don't think you're a libtard. Listen, you're a guy from New York. I understand your position. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Bro.
Go ahead.
If we are dealing with words which you agree are dangerous because they invoke in others responses that we don't like, and they invoke a necessity, the ratchet on the other side, then we should be cautious to leave it ambiguous as to whether we're referring to a movement as violent or nonviolent, or just on the spectrum or acquiescent to whatever kind of thing that you want to say as a middle ground.
Okay.
Fair?
So
should we be
that?
crystal clear,
Yeah.
or should we allow the ambiguity to hold?
I think that you're like the only one that is engaging in the conversation at this level. What I would say is I think it's important to call out right now that the overall rhetoric and strategy of trans activism in the United States is incredibly harmful. It is detrimental to the movement and to progressive things in general in this country. And I mean, calling it violent, you might have a problem with that, but it's basically getting us to that point, and it needs to be called out. And I think that demonstrating to people that this is essentially leading to violence or something, or saying it's definitely not a movement of nonviolence, I think it's important to do that. Yeah, more important than fixating on whether or not stuff leading right up to violence and endorsing violence but not being violence is violence. I don't think there's much value in that conversation. Now, if we were talking about crafting laws for making it illegal, then that conversation is paramount. This is the most important conversation. But right now,
if she had come out and said trans movement is a violent movement, would you agree with that? Would you say that you're 100% agree?
I would be closer to disagree. I might disagree with her on that. I'd be close.
Would you have publicly challenged her on it? That's my question.
Maybe. Calling it a violent movement is kind of weird. I don't know if there's enough evidence for that. But calling it a movement of nonviolence, given the strategies and everything, I don't think. But again, it feels like there's some world in between there. I just don't have a word for it.
Okay.
But I think
Also,
most people intuitively agree with that.
Pisco almost had you with the conservative movement then earlier in the conversation, and then it seemed like you snatched victory from the jaws of defeat there. So I'm kind of confused where you fall on MAGA, the Republican Party, and the conservative movement as violent, because initially it seemed like you agreed that they're a death cult, you would call them violent, and then later on you said,
well, no, what I said was it probably has to be with respect to a given thing, right? So for instance, are the Republicans violent in terms of a group of people trying to prevent themselves from being taxed? I mean, probably not. I don't think Republicans are calling take up arms against the IRS, man. But
wait, so you're going to contextualize it to given situations, and you're not going to contextualize and limit and cabin the trans movement's response to the barricading to that specific moment?
Wait,
it just sounds like you're willing to make so much more.
What are you talking about? Wait, I am encapsulating it. The trans movement to stuff related to trans activism. That's about as encapsulated as you can be.
No. The violent. You're willing to characterize the trans movement as a whole as not engaging in non-violence, because of their response to a particular issue, and you're
Well, it's not
ambiguous
just
about whether
one response. It's not like this is the only time that it seems like there's unclear positions in progressive circles about whether or not to endorse violence or whatever. This
I'm
isn't like the only
confident
thing.
that for every example of like a prominent progressive who says something that's either violent or explicitly not non-violent, I can give you 2 examples of a prominent conservative doing the same thing. So I think Pisco's point, and I know my point is, I don't see how by the same standard that you and Anna are applying to the trans movement, you would not condemn the MAGA movement even more so.
With
Like, there's
respect
no-
to some things, I probably would. I'm pretty sure I've said the exact same shit. Like when the Buffalo shooting happens, and that guy had like a manifesto, I think, talking about like, you know, killing black people or whatever the fuck. I have to go back and check, right? Yeah, I would say people like Tucker Carlson are directly responsible for stuff like that. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to sit here and not say that, of course.
Well, this was.
I would also say
crazy.
too, like I hold like Donald Trump directly responsible. January 6th wasn't bad just because a person got killed by the cops or got shot or whatever. January 6th was bad because the president of the United States was directly responsible for what ended up being an attempted coup in the country. That's why that was bad.
Well, I just don't want to beat a dead horse. I'm kind of with Pisco in the moment that I'm struggling to understand the differentiation. So I need to process it, and I'll come back to you. But I don't see the
I'm with
distinction.
Room. Me and Ruminate are on the right side of history, in my opinion. Just a quick thing. I'm gonna bring up the Lauren Southern question, which you didn't answer
Which one?
in that debate, which is, do you say the same thing about Muslims and their lack of condemnation, to the extent that that's true, of violence by Islamic?
If there is a lack of condemnation, yeah, but my understanding is that when there are like these major terrorist movements or whatever, that there are a lot of imams and stuff that speak out against that violence. That I believe, I could be wrong, but isn't it the case that the majority of violence that Muslims commit are usually against other Muslims? I mean, like when you look at like the conflict in Yemen, when you look at stuff across the Middle East, when you look at fucking ISIS, like I'm pretty sure the majority of Muslims killed by Muslims are. Or the majority of people killed by Muslims are the Muslims. And I think that there are a lot of Muslim thought leaders that speak out against it. So if all of them were silent on it, then yeah, there would be. But of course they're speaking out against it. Like this is violence that sometimes in their own
okay.
communities.
So to immunize from criticism, as long as you don't need the people to disavow. You don't need to posture them to change positions. But you just need some amount of trans advocate leaders to condemn violence, and that will immunize the harm being done by the bad actors.
To some extent, yeah, but I think intuitively you're phrasing it in such a crazy way, but I think intuitively you agree with this. For instance, I think it's probably fair to hold the Catholic Church responsible if the Pope is not willing to speak out against all the child sex crimes, or some of these archdioceses, some of these like larger communities or figures, if they're not willing to come and speak out, you can't say that, well, look at how much charity work the Catholic Church does. Look at our congregation. Look how much good we do. If there's child sex crimes going on and leadership isn't willing to come out and explicitly disavow and fight against it, I think that one thing, like the example you said earlier with the body, would corrupt the entire movement. Yes.
If leadership...
Wait, do you agree with that or not agree with that? Because you never actually answer my hypothetical. Like, do you agree or disagree with that? That one lack, that without disavowing that would taint or sully the entire Catholic Church, even if 99% of them never raped kids and didn't support it?
I think that it would, you not calling it out, absolutely would be a taint on the movement. I wouldn't call Catholicists a pedophile movement, right? Or anything like that, right? You would agree with that? Is Catholicism a pedophile movement?
If it was the case that none of the leadership was willing to speak out against it, and people are, yeah, actually, I think I would. If like, because the accusations even go farther than that there were some of these preachers that were abusing children were literally being moved around to different churches. Yeah,
it was covered up or facilitated by various officials.
Maybe
we're talking about Catholicism or the Catholic Church, which is more hierarchical, more.
Well, hold on. Catholicism is only the Catholic Church. There is no other type of Catholicism besides what
Well,
flows
I think
from the
he's
Vatican.
separating the institution of the church, like the Pope and everybody, from just the belief movement.
The believers, people who are Catholic without any.
I mean, you
particular
can't,
relationship
without getting
to
too
the-
into it, you can't be Catholic without having a relationship to the Pope. Like, he's literally your from Peter, the descended dude that speaks to God.
I mean, I don't mean a spiritual connection to the Pope or to the Catholic institution. I mean a direct connection in the sense that you are part of that institution, right? Just because come on, if you believe in a leader, or if you practice teachings, like if you believe in Gandhi, does that mean that you are part of whatever bad things I forget what he was doing? Was it pedophile stuff? or was it just
Was Gandhi the
I don't
guy
know.
where they
Your
said he tried
parents
to?
are Catholic.
Gandhi,
I thought. Like
Gandhi.
you wouldn't condemn your parents in that respect. Not to make it personal, but aren't your
I
parents
condemn, bro. I
Catholic?
condemn my mom all
they
the time
part
for
of
her
the
Trump
pedophile
supporting
movement?
MAGA shit. What do you mean? Yeah, of course.
No,
I
I mean
do.
not like
your
that.
mom part of a pedophile movement?
Yeah, you wouldn't say that. You wouldn't say Mama Destiny.
I probably actually explicitly have when we argue about trans stuff in the past. Actually, I'm pretty sure I brought that exact. And she always cries when I do it, but I'm sure I brought that exact example up. Yeah, that she says that like she doesn't like this, the teachers and some of the LGBT stuff is grooming, whatever. And I say, oh, how do you feel about like the pedophile Catholic Church? I'm pretty sure I've had this exact argument with her before. Yeah,
and
of course.
Toronto is part of the pedophile movement too.
That's Islam is that's. I don't know. He could be. That's a way hairier religious doctrine question. But no. But hold on. I'm glad you brought that up because it's a really good example. Because in that case, I'm asking my mom to hold the trans movement to the same standard that she would hold the Catholic Church to, but she's not. She's willing to call the trans movement sometimes like groomers and blah blah blah. And I'm saying, okay, well, what about the Catholic Church? And I think that's evidence that like if the whole Catholic Church leadership structure is not willing to disavow stuff inside of it, I think that calls into question the legitimacy of the entire Catholic Church, which I think is fair, despite all the good they do.
What if it was just one incident of pedophilia in the Catholic Church and they never?
Or what if they
it was
publicly
one
disavow it when
incident-
they're caught, but we find evidence that they have facilitated it along the way? Like
Well,
they
then
say one thing and
obviously
do
that would
another.
betray them disavowing it, right? Obviously. Like you can't do a fake disavowal and get credit from me. But like if it was the case that like there was let's say that was the case, Pisco. Let's say only one instance happened, but then it got covered up by like the Pope and like 3 like what do they call them, bishops
there's
or
a
whatever.
document that say, like
Yeah,
okay.
and then like
Yeah,
that gets discovered, and then the Pope and everybody else is silent on it. Yeah, I think that does taint the. I think it's really. I think you have to disavow the more toxic aspects of your movement. Like, let's say, for instance, let's say that my YouTube editor was starting, and he's the only one. Let's say let's say every single person in my movement is actually the most peaceful person in the world.
Somebody clip
Let's
this.
say August runs around and he starts like talking about how he wants to fuck kids or something, and that's like what he goes all over Twitter and he starts saying that all the time. And I'm like, are you really gonna condemn me on my entire movement based on this one guy or whatever? Like, I mean, I'm not like everybody else is fine. We don't have any kitty fuckers in my whole community. It's just him. Like, do you think that that's legitimate? Or do you think that one person would actually probably, rightfully
I think
so,
if
like taint the entire movement? They'd be like, well,
Would omniliberalism be tainted? If the majority of omniliberal, you're not speaking out of it for legal reasons, but the majority of omniliberals either have no comment or are saying that they're not okay with it.
I mean, arguably, wasn't this in part what happened to kind of like the Labour Party in the United Kingdom not taking a strong enough stance against potential anti-Semitism? Was their inability to come out and call out certain things related to Corbyn's past or other things? My history here is not as good, but I thought that yeah, I think the more you ask me the questions, the more intuitively strongly I feel about my position. That yeah, if you're not willing to come out and harshly condemn really toxic aspects of your movement, one or two things can bring the entire movement down on itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's where where we're at. I think that you should measure a movement based on, not
The
to say that it can't
polling
be
data,
tainted
the
by certain
aggregate
scandals.
opinions of all the people?
No. I think that you should absolutely consider thought leaders. You should absolutely consider, major aspects of their doctrine as opposed to less major aspects of their doctrine, things that they stress, things that they do. But it's kind of a balancing test, right? It's kind of like your perception, your preference on how you want to label it based on the totality of evidence in front of you. And if what you have in front of you is not that much violence at all, and a ton of things of advocacy through nonviolent means, and yes, they're not
Means
coming
that
out
aren't
and saying-
violent, not nonviolent,
things
yeah.
that are not violent. They're not outright saying it in the same degree the Civil Rights Act is, but of course they wouldn't have to, because the kind of opposition they were getting in the Civil Rights Movement, I said act, the Civil Rights Movement is different in kind than the kind of opposition they're getting now. Agreed? The kind of opposition that trans people are getting is not at all, and I guess the violent stakes are not at all the same as what was in the Civil Rights Movement. They're more attenuated in this case, and so I
Wait,
forgive
can you
them a little
explain?
bit
Hold on,
for
I
that.
have no idea what that sentence just meant. I'm sorry, can you
So,
say that
like,
again?
there was outright lynchings and murders, and on a wide scale going on of particular advocates who were a part of the student nonviolent coordinating committee. Violence against Black people in general during the Civil Rights Movement. Widespread police brutality during the Civil Rights Movement, and there was a genuine feeling among a lot of Black individuals that violence might be something that is worth pursuing in response. And so the nature and the character of the enemy or the opposition in the case of the Civil Rights Movement, I think has a lot closer connection to violence than the opposition to the trans movement today. Fair?
This is just like the longest sentence I've ever heard in my entire life. Can you? I'm so sorry. Can you rephrase
Okay,
it one more
so
time?
you think the
Am
civil
I
rights
either
movement
retarded? Like, okay,
opposition-
hold on. You're talking like a philosopher. Okay, so give me
Do
more.
you think the
go ahead.
threat to civil rights movement individuals, the physical threat to their physical
was
well-being,
greater than that? Probably, maybe. It depends on how you define it. I guess I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think that the direct physical harm, while not insignificant in the case of trans individuals, I think is more attenuated, and so you would, and the kind of priors we have about the police allowing certain speech and our First Amendment priors on protests are much stronger in this case than they were in the 1960s, and so the kind of and the sort of practice of nonviolence has become almost an aspect of our culture, and we believe it almost like a founding myth, that I think it's not surprising that you wouldn't expect most movements to be as outwardly nonviolent or Gandhi-esque as they were in the civil rights movement. It's not as big of a deal.
I mean,
be
I kind of
nonviolent.
understand, but like, do you feel? I guess okay. So let's pretend this is a total topic switch, okay? But like for BLM, do you feel like that the advocacy for that was like purely broadly nonviolent, or would you say there were violent, at least violent aspects to it? Do you feel like you heard a lot of
there were
mainstream people support like Kamala Harris bailing out people that have been arrested, stuff like that? Do you think that that's a little worrisome, or?
Bailing out people who were arrested.
I believe Kamala
as
Harris
part
is
of
providing.
BLM riots, right? Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
I believe. Well, if you're arrested, I imagine it was for probable cause to get arrested. But yeah, for Kamala Harris providing bail indiscriminately for people like that, do you think that that's like a bit problematic, or are you just like, oh, it's all cool, or?
I think that bailing out individuals because they don't have money, and if it has to do with them having money, as opposed to whether or not they remain a threat to whatever, then that could be a different analysis. But
Well, I mean, it's not like they were giving money individually to people that are like.
It seems like
yeah.
an endorsement of their activities, right?
Sure.
When you're giving money to whatever. So I think that that's probably misguided if what you're talking about are actual rioters, people who are destroying property, people who are assaulting police. I would not be in favor of bailing them out, even
Sure.
though I might be against.
Sure. And do you
bail
agree
and
that there's like a
liberty.
general trend of like shoplifting is cool and like maybe people's businesses should be burned down?
I disavow that.
I know that
But
you
again,
do,
not-
but I'm asking you generally in progressive circles, does it seem like there's pretty broad support for this kind of stuff?
How would we know? We know we're only talking
Because we
to,
look
like,
at
Peter
what all of
Coffins
the
and
Peter Coffins. We're talking about the
don't know who the
Hasanabis
people
and the
are.
Majority Reports and the I don't know, like who these are, like some of the Brianna Joy Grays. These are like some of the largest like progressive
Twitter
figures.
pilled. Yeah, you're just Twitter pilled.
Yeah, progressivism is like. What do you think trans activism comes from? It's Twitter pilled. I mean, like, what do you mean?
Maybe I'm less Twitter pilled. You've worn me out.
Okay.
Can I just say something? It seems like you're talking past each other a little bit on the point of contention, because the things that are convincing here, Destiny, I don't think that anyone would really disagree when it's explicitly spelled out. I think you're being convinced that the lack of motivation to stand up to these elements that are insidious in some of these movements, minority as they may be, speak negatively on the movement as a whole and ruin the movement's political
When the
success.
movement doesn't take strong positions against them, yes, I think that's the issue. Is it
Yeah.
feels like an endorsement,
Yeah.
or in some cases it is explicitly endorsed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think that's what's being contested here. I don't think Pisco would really disagree with that. Like, I agree with that. I'm sure Pisco agrees.
I think Pisco would disagree.
I
with
think. Wait. Well, let me just maybe.
ask me the
I'll reframe. Yeah. So what I took to be the point of disagreement is not whether it speaks negatively on the movement or ruins the movement's political success. What I took to be the point of disagreement is whether that labels the political movement itself
Correct.
as the characteristic. Yeah. So like,
Exactly.
you know, is the Catholic Church a church of pedophilia because they're not speaking out against this? Not whether they're bad for it. Is our Islamic?
God, this guy
our-
gets right to the issue every time. How did you not want this guy in your community?
Well, you saw Vegan Games trying to see how the baggage he brings. I'm just kidding. No, sure.
he
I
makes
understand.
left.
Wait, but
You're right.
hold on. We're gonna hit at the same issue again, right? So like, let's say that this exact same thing happens. Okay, 5 child rapes happen. Only 5. Catholic Church is a big church. Okay, and then let's say somebody comes out here and they're speaking against the Catholic Church, and then you come to my channel and let's say that it was the fact that the Pope, none of the church leadership was willing to call out the pedophilia, and you come to me and you're like, Destiny, is it really fair to call the church the Catholic Church a church of pedophilia? And you push and you push and push, and finally acquiesce. I'm like, okay, maybe not. However, not calling the Catholic Church a church of pedophilia feels a lot different than saying they're the church of non-pedophilia if the leadership knows kids are being raped, and in some cases they're actively covering it up. I wouldn't call them the church of non-pedophilia.
Yeah, that's fine. Why can't we just use a middling term like pedophilia apologia, pedophilia adjacent?
Well, that's what I asked. That's what I asked. Like, are you like complicit in like violent encouragement or implicit calls around something else? But both of these guys seem unwilling to. But yeah, that's what I've been saying the entire time. Is that it sounds like we need some sort of middle term besides violent or non-violent. The other term is stochastic terrorism, which I don't think Pisco likes for reasons, but I don't know what that middle term is. But me and Pisco would agree that I think we need some other word there.
Yeah.
So Pisco, you probably know more about this than I do because these are legal terms. Like the distinction between fighting words versus incitement. I don't know if any of those apply here.
No, we're not at a legal ground, and all of us would agree that inciting to violence is wrong. We all agree that.
What about complicit? If that's like something that you want to use, like in the lay term, like they're not calling it out. They kind of facilitate it by not calling it out, but they're not actually guilty of the thing itself.
Violence, complicity.
He's referencing so Destiny's referencing legal conduct or conduct that we should allow in terms of like I don't know technically allow.
Wait, hold on. To be clear, no, I'm not. I've never talked about this should be allowed or not allowed legally. We're not even having. That's never been part of this conversation.
Chill, bro. Just chill.
I am so chill right now. I love you. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is he is not fighting when you're referencing. I'm just telling Avi why I don't think that those terms are helpful because when you're referencing fighting words or incitement, those are like akin to violence, and so those would be the kind of things that I probably would consider under the rubric of violence is directly and imminently calling for someone to kill someone, right?
Gotcha. It's too strong a word for it.
Correct.
What we're trying to describe. Okay.
It would be more on the line like fighting words and incitement would be like that's in the violence category. Tucker Carlson, right? For all he does, under the legal definition of incitement that we want to onboard, wouldn't fit that standard. It's more of the implicit stuff, and so that's why I think that those terms are not helpful, and they conflate the actual legal definitions, which I think is why Stephen wants to use new terms.
Well, what about like violence complacency or violence apologia or violence adjacent?
If he wants to
something
say
like that.
I think violence. Some of these terms are going to get harder to even stand by because violence apologia. If somebody's like, "Well, I didn't say that it was okay. I didn't explicitly say it was fine. That wasn't apologia." That's unfair to say. I don't know if you could. I don't know what particular term we would get to here. I think that stochastic terrorism idea is what hits it at the most, but nobody seems to like that term.
Because it uses the same. These are your arguments about the terms being inherently whatever. The terrorism term, you were the one who said that is going to be misused and abused, and now everyone we don't like is a terrorist. And so I don't know why you're not sensitive to.
Well, I don't even. I feel like this argument had a different context to it, but.
Okay. All right, I got to bounce, but.
Loser.
Stay cool.
Love you, buddy.
Yeah, love you too.
Be safe.
I wanted to talk to you, Destiny, about plastic surgery. If you had a moment.
Well, that's my cue. Hey, real quick, how the hell did you know this was like an SMB7 or whatever? How did you know that?
Because everybody has problems
terrifying.
applying the correct gain to them and setting them up. They're always too quiet. But it sounds like you figured your shit out. Wait, what's your signal chain? Do you have a cloud lifter?
Wave XLR.
Wave XLR. Is that a...
Yeah, Elgato.
What is that? Is that an interface or...
Okay, you are getting way too technical. It's got a dial on it where I can increase volume and gain, and I'm not very tech savvy.
Well, whatever
like,
it is, it's got a lot of
interface.
clean gain, so congratulations. A lot of people have trouble getting the mic to work. Okay, sorry.
Appreciate it, buddy. Talk to you
Okay,
later.
have fun. Okay, what's up?
So-
Plastic surgery. Oh, my favorite talk.
Yeah, I know. I saw that video with you and what's her name, Farah?
Yep.
Yeah. So if I understand your position, it's your main gripe. There may be multiple, but your main gripe with plastic surgery is the idea that the variable ways that people can look attractive. What plastic surgery does is it decreases that variability and it results in this convergence among one mode.
Yeah, surgically
Of,
chasing like aesthetic appeal, I think in general is probably not a good thing for society. Also, I don't know if your mic is really bad if you're just using the wrong mic, but it might just be your mic is not that great.
Oh, I'm probably on phone. Is this better?
No, you didn't
That's why
change
I'm,
anything.
okay. Sorry. So
You're a goddamn doctor. You have a
Yeah.
real mic in your house. Where is it? What's going on? Wait.
I too. I can go. All right. I can be back later if you like. In a few
Well, no,
minutes.
that's okay. Oh, go ahead. Give me your ring. That's fine.
Sure.
Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
All right, all right. Yeah, no. So I understand like chasing is you have the view that chasing aesthetic appeal is bad, but I'm trying to figure out why. Like, and I understand the reason behind why. From what I understood from the video was you think it's bad because it decreases the variable ways in which people can be aesthetically attractive. Like you have in your mind, like, okay, well, here's an archetype that looks good. Here's an archetype that looks good. There's all these different archetypes that look good. And plastic surgery is going to reduce those amount of archetypes because there's going to be this convergence into like one or a handful of archetypes.
Yeah, I think a society collectively with a bunch of people that look different, are okay with looking different, and enjoy the different looks of people is a better society than the society where everybody is converging onto one appearance. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What if I were to? So, what if imagine two different like ways plastic surgery can be applied in society. Okay. So one way is the way you have in mind. So. There's like this ideal standard for whatever like gender you are, whatever age you are, like we'll just converge everyone onto this one like, get all the ratios the right way and everyone's just the same. But what if there's this other way of applying plastic surgery, which instead of having that model, has a model of recognizing that there are various different attractive archetypes, and rather than just converging everyone onto one archetype or two or three archetypes, focuses more on just enhancing what individuals already have to make them more attractive within their own archetype that they already are. And so what you're left with is like maybe 500 or 1,000 different attractive archetypes, and it's like they're all peaking within those archetypes in terms of attractiveness. So think of it like Sam Harris's moral landscape with all the different peaks, and there's like 500 of them instead of one, or something like that.
Yeah, then I think that you're in an area where defining the archetypes, because like one person will say 1,000. 1,000 would probably collapse to 800. That would collapse to 500. Like I feel like we would just slowly move towards one. I don't know if there would be like islands of stability around certain archetypes. I think that eventually some things would be considered more desirable. That'd be my guess, but go ahead.
Yeah. So that's before we get into like the empirics of what is more likely to happen or not, I just want to like get your like principled view. Like, so let's just say, because it can go both ways. So you can go from 1,000 to 2,000, and you could do that just as well as you can go from 1,800. So my question to you is just that let's just say there is a society that uses plastic surgery in the way I'm describing. Would you then have a problem with plastic surgery?
I think I probably would. Yeah. I don't think I would want a society where people feel the pressure to converge onto archetypes. I think I would rather people feel comfortable like looking different than other people. And I think other people accepting that people can look different than other people. I think that would be like a broader thing that I would hope that people could do.
Gotcha. And so there wouldn't be like an archetype number that would change you then. As long as like,
well, I mean, there could be like 6 billion archetypes or something, right?
Yeah. It would have to be like the number that would be the number of people that exist. So long as someone wants to look different, and say, look in the mirror and say, listen, I have this desire to look different, and even if I see that looking different as an optimization of what the features I already have, rather than looking like someone else, even if I am not even picturing anyone else in my mind, even if I'm not looking at anyone else in my mind, and just say, hey, listen, these are the features I have. I want to highlight them. That would be like bad on your view.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So it's not, and even if that increased variability, like let's just say, so then it's not about variability, because that could be used to increase people looking differently from each other. Like you can have like twins, and one twin says like, I want to look different from this.
Well,
other
sure.
one.
I think that in a society where plastic surgery was being used for diverging appearances, I'd probably feel fundamentally different than if it was for converging appearances. That's probably true. If somebody, like for instance, like gauges or extreme body modifications, even though I think they're kind of weird, personally, like I think I have less of a problem with that than somebody like doing like rhinoplasty or something, or BBL or whatever. Like diverging appearances, I'd probably feel differently about than converging appearances.
Gotcha. Okay, so then it is about variability. So variability is increased with plastic. If a society uses variability as plastic surgery to increase that variability, then you might be in favor of plastic surgery.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Assuming all the
So-
obvious bases are covered and it's not like high fatality rate and all that shit, right? Yeah.
Sure. Okay. And to the degree that, presumably to the degree that it doesn't reduce variability, reduces variability less, you may have a problem, but less of a problem. Like the teeth would be grinded a little bit.
The teeth would be. Wait, give me that example again, or what do you mean by that?
The teeth would, yeah. So, well, if plastic surgery is used to converge on one archetype, you're going to have a big problem. If it's 2 archetypes, you'll have a big problem, but less of a problem. If it's 1,000 archetypes, not as much of a problem. Like a scale.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's the pressure to conform is the issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
The pressure to conform. Yeah. I don't like you bring up the teeth thing. I feel like teeth are a little bit different because
No. I'm sorry. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
No, okay, gotcha.
I'm not
teeth
trying to-
grinding. Okay,
yeah,
I understand. Okay, yeah, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, like the teeth of the argument don't
Yeah,
fight.
I understand what you're saying now. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm not going to make an analogy to teeth. I know.
Sure.
Like, I'm not going there. I've seen it. Okay, cool. And then in terms of the empirics and where you see plastic surgery, you presumably see it like as a very variability reducing process where it's like really like reducing. It's like with that Miss Korea video.
Yeah,
saw
where
that on the
eventually
screen.
everybody kind of wants to look the same. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll push back a little bit on the empirics. So the Miss Korea video was, I don't think it was actually Miss Korea, although that's not very like germane to the point. It was different. It was like it was one of those runner-up competitions. But the main point is that those contestants actually look very different from each other. After plastic surgery, the issue there was just Photoshop. They just Photoshopped everyone to look alike in that video. It's a little bit of
it
a-
might be the case that that particular example was Photoshop. My understanding
Yeah.
is, though, that I do believe in South Korea, I think they do have the highest incidence of facial plastic surgery in the world. And I do think there's like a general, like, beautiful Korean, like, appearance that people are going for. But
So what I encourage you to do, because I really wish I was up, so I can go to my computer and do this, but if you actually look at that video that you looked at, and you look at what they, so you're right, there is a high rate of plastic surgery, but if you look at what these people look like post-plastic surgery, there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of variability there. The video just portrays like everyone looking the same, and it's like really scary and spooky. But if you get rid of the Photoshop that made them look like that in the first place, and you look at what they actually look like side by side, those contestants, they look strikingly different from each other. I mean, they have
sure,
some
they might. But do you
similarities since they're
think
all
that
Korean,
do you
but,
think
like,
that the plastic surgery they got was to make them look even more different, or do you think it was to bring them in line with conventional beauty standards?
Yeah, I think that's going to depend on which plastic surgeon you go to. In my experience, I can't speak to the ones in Korea, but
Well, even the
I-
ones in the United States,
yeah.
they're not like, I'm going to give you
Yeah,
the
yeah,
most
I can
unique
speak to
nose
those.
you've ever seen, right? It's going to be, I'm going to give
no,
you a kid
no,
look
they're
right.
not. Yeah, they're not. Most I've seen don't try to do either. So most I've seen, what they do is they assess the patient, they assess their characteristics, and then they say, okay, well, what are the tailored needs for this patient? If the patient's just saying like, hey, I don't want anything, but just what would you recommend?
Well, sure, but the recommendation is going to
yeah.
be bring you in line with conventional beauty standards. That's the point of cosmetic surgery. It's not to go from one unique nose to another unique nose. It's to go from
Right.
yeah.
Sure, but it's not. But when you say bringing in line with conventional beauty standards, there are ways of doing that which can increase or decrease variability. Like you can, there's ways of bringing people in line with conventional beauty standards that accentuate their own unique appearances or their own characteristics, and there's ways of bringing people in line with conventional beauty standards that do not do that. That track just this 1 or 2 or 3 archetypes.
Sure, I think I fundamentally disagree with that statement. Like if you have 10 people that all want like rhinoplasty, okay, and then if we were to measure through 15 different measurements on the nose, like points of variability, if we were to measure before and after their surgeries, my guess would be after the surgeries, the overall amount of entropy or variability has changed. It's gone down.
Okay. So what I can do is I can send you some data on, I don't have rhinoplasty, I can look for rhinoplasty. I can send you some data on breast augmentation. So what I can do is I'll send you like, there's not a whole lot of data, but there's some good data from, and this is from the 1990s. I don't think any other paper that I've seen does this, but I can send you this data, and what you can do is we can look at the variability of people who are going to get breast augmentation. So we can look at things like their cup size, we can look before and after, and we can see what the variability of cup size is before, what the variability of cup size is after. And what you find is not that this idea, like you may have this idea, well, oh, well, everyone's just going to be a double D or a D, and that's just they're all tracking that same, but that's really not what happens at all.
That's probably not what happens, but the size isn't the important. Here's two areas where the variability will massively decrease. I'm almost positive. One, difference in cup size from left to right is certainly going to be lower post breast augmentation than prior, right? Girls tend to have...
Wait, hold on. Let's repeat that again.
That women's between their own breasts, between left and right, are going to be very, very, very small after surgery as compared to before, right? Nobody's going to get...
Oh, you mean the size of like the left breast and the right breast?
Yes.
Like the difference between those two?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's one point of variability that's going to completely disappear, if not decrease dramatically. And then secondly, it's going to be broad properties like, for instance, like perkiness versus sagginess or placement on chest. These things are probably going to fall in line to a certain cosmetic standard as well. I don't know if I'd measure fake boobs just on breast size.
Yeah, so there's different, so what I will grant is that there's probably certain metrics that are going to decrease in variability. So yes, typically, especially things like symmetry. People want to look, like one thing that's pretty standard is like people do have the desire to look symmetrical. And that will cause a decrease in variability. There are other metrics that will be increased in variability. I can tell you that the left to right, from like pre and post, if you take a cohort of people going in to get breast augmentation and the cup sizes after breast augmentation, will have an increase in variability. Because if you look at the people who are getting, they're almost like the distribution is like A cups, maybe some B cups, a few C cups, and then it's just the distribution after is well, B, C, D, double D, and if you look at the distribution, it's just a wider spread. So you'll lose out on if you were to have any basic metric of variability, like on that metric, it would increase. So some probably would decrease and some probably would increase. But I don't think it's this very simple picture of, well, everyone's just going to get infinite plastic surgery.
If you're making that comparison, are you including medically elective breast augmentations as well? Because I don't know if I would agree.
No. I'm not talking. No, I'm talking about cosmetic. I'm talking about
only
cosmetic,
ones done for a cosmetic.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay, that might be the case,
No,
but I don't think when it comes to doing breast augmentation, I don't think people are necessarily just want bigger, although a lot do. But I think like perkier is a big one, placement is a big one, and symmetry are a big one. I'd be curious what the point is on why women choose, but yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually good. There's So there's some data on like the quote. I can send you this paper. So there's this data on the ideal breast like dimensions, where they just take this overall assessment of like, the perkiness, symmetry, the distance between the two areola and everything. It's, but what I don't think is happening, there's some things that are going to decrease in variability, but I don't think we're proxying this like summation, this like abstract summation of like, here is the ideal female chest. There are some metrics that are going to have increased variability, some metrics that are going to have decreased variability. Some are just more universally tracked than others. And what ends up winning out, to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure. It probably depends on the philosophy of the plastic surgeon involved. It probably varies based on a whole bunch of different factors. But what I am confident is not happening. What I am confident is not happening is anything even close to that the South Korea, like the non-Miss Korea. It wasn't even a Miss Korea contest. It was that runner-up contest where like everyone just looks the same and like everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. Like, yeah, that's just not what's happening.
I'd be curious in seeing that, I guess, because I feel like for breast augmentation, I feel like most people would probably be tending towards like a perfect breast. Now it's probably going to change a bit depending on like your body size. So like a 5'1" woman, you know, with an incredibly petite body might not be going for the most massive fucking huge tits she can, but yeah, but I feel like there's going to be like body types are going to tend towards like what they would see as like a perfect archetype of a breast or something.
Yeah, in some, well, again, depends on what aspect of the things that make up. I agree that certain aspects are much more loaded than others that people will track. So the one I would put like highly, like the most strongly, would be symmetry. Just because that's like probably one of the most universally like sought after things, and like asymmetries just stand out. Like you can't help but see it.
Yeah, symmetry and probably perkiness, like those two things. Like you want boobs that don't sag. I think those are the two biggest reasons.
Not saying. Although, if you had to make it, if someone, I imagine that if someone had to choose between like, hey, would you rather have like 2 saggy boobs or like one really great perky boob and one like really saggy boob? Like, I think the saggy boob would win.
That's
2 saggy boobs,
possible.
just because like, just because like that's just real. Like asymmetry is just look really, really weird to people.
Sure.
But yeah, so those. But yeah, I agree. Like those two things probably would decrease variability. Size doesn't, though. Size increases in variability. Weirdly.
Sure. Yeah, that's possible.
And that's just probably because, like, if you look at the people going into plastic surgery, they're not very variable. Like, they have, like, there's just a whole bunch of A cups. And then they come out like a bunch of B cups, C cups, D cups, double Ds.
Sure.
So, yeah, it really depends on what you're talking about. But yeah, I would look up that that Korean contest, because like it is really remarkable how misleading that was. And if you like take off the like Photoshop filter, they'll look at it like, holy shit, these are just a whole bunch of different people.
Okay.
And yeah, they had all about plastic surgery, but yeah, you get a very different picture.
Gotcha.
All right, that's all I got.
All right. Well, hi, I love you, buddy.
Take care. Love you too.
Boom, boom. Damn, we made it through 0 videos this stream. I feel like I'm all Anna Kasparian out. Do I want to watch the rest of this Hassan video? Wait, is this done? I think I'm done with this.
Clear and obvious indication that as long as you are on board with the pre-existing hierarchical standards, then
You're doing a great job, buddy. Go ahead and throw up a league game. You've earned it. Yeah, have I? I feel like I have earned a league game.
In fact, experts say that you should start having fairly explicit sexual education conversations with children as early as age 6, because they know a lot more. Now, Tim Pool, I don't know if he has any children, but again, I challenge anybody who has a child who is not a fundamentalist to explain to me why we shouldn't have sex education starting in 1st and 2nd grade and getting more explicit as they go. Because by the time they're 14 or 15...
Well, it super depends on what you mean by sex education. In 1st grade? Oh, that feels really weird. But it depends on what he means by sex education. Like, if I'm being ultra generous, if he just means that like little boys have penises and little girls have vaginas, maybe? Like the anatomy or whatever, maybe, if I'm being ultra charitable, but
like, it's some very bad news for you. They know just about all of it. The percentage of kids who are not aware of what a blow or that they exist. And the real danger is when they don't know what those things are, and they are fumbling around in their first instance.
And get into some sort of forum. And I just want to say real quick, like the context that a student, a child, like a genderqueer child would learn about this in the context of an award-winning memoir they got from a library should be so much more comforting to people than like some sort of online
and seeing
forum.
whatever on
an award-winning memoir. Wait, what?
I mean, I'm not in favor of censorship of pornography either, but kids at that age are seeing it, but they don't have context or explanation. This is about education.
This is not pornography. Pornography is gratuitous sexual acts that do not have any purpose. That's the definition of pornography. This is not pornography. What he is saying is exactly what all the right-wing Jerry Falwell, all of the
yeah, like there's a world where I can agree with this. If we're talking like sex ed in terms of like don't let people touch you in places that make you uncomfortable and stuff like that. But man, why do you have to use blowjob as an example of maybe, yeah, I'm not sure, I don't know, maybe.
The fundamentalists say that any depiction, this is the kind of stuff that has John Ashcroft putting a sheet over a statue with bare breasts. That's what George Bush's attorney general doing that. Put this up. This is the educational standards, the national sex education standards. This is what UNESCO uses as its basis. I want to go to grades 6 to 8. That is middle school.
Yep.
All right. Sexual health. Define vaginal, oral, and anal sex.
By the end of 8th grade, you should be able to.
But that is the core concept. Define vaginal, oral, and anal sex. Then it goes on to say things that analyze how alcohol can influence the sexual decision-making,
STDs,
identify, et cetera, et cetera. 6 to 8, grade 6 to 8. In grade 6, you are...
I think I can kind of see that.
8, grade 6 to 8.
Teaching like protection, condoms, reduce risk of unintended pregnancy and STDs. I think I'm probably okay. Grades 6 to 8. Kids are what, 12, 13, 14? Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, for sure.
In grade 6, you are 11, maybe 12.
Yep.
You can also be 10. Grade 7, 11, 12.
And all this is borne out by
8, 13.
Yep.
By data that shows that this protects kids from teen pregnancy, from rape, from molestation. All of this data is very clear. And I just want to put into context why we're highlighting this particular clip here with the genderqueer thing, because Tim is using this clip of me where I don't advocate for any of the things he said.
Let's play that clip where he's...
Fuck, I'm all like Anna'd out right now, okay? I don't know if I want to talk about the... I'm trans rights out today. It is always fear-mongering that they were teaching sex to children, but not doing that lets them learn all sorts of increased stuff elsewhere. Can you read my YouTube dono? Just look at that 2-minute clip from your sub. Show us the speech you gave at the student event thing. August will probably upload it, I imagine. You're gonna make a certain someone pay their bet? Oh, listen, that's your issues between chatters, okay? I'm not here to regulate those fights. Is he posting the Q&A too? He must, I think. My speech is like 15 minutes long. The whole speech plus Q&A is like an hour. God. Oh, never mind. I was about to bitch about how bad. I mean, that's still pretty bad, actually. It's not even sacred, bro. When's the Anna convo? I don't know. Sometime soon? You promised Sneeko you'd watch his video? Yeah, I will. But I'm fucking tired today. I've got, I gotta leave tomorrow. I'm doing Tim Pool. Tim Pool has a show called Culture Wars. I'm doing one of those, and then I'm talking to some other guy that disagrees with me about something I said about something. I'm not even sure, actually. I want my Paragon points. I need 45. Fuck. How many Paragon points do you get for finishing a dungeon? Is it 10 or 20? Because you stayed up four more hours after you ended stream yesterday. Yeah, I did something last night. I'm sure it was important. I don't remember what it was. You mean your XP for your glyph? What? No, I'm just asking I'm asking how much renown you get. Sorry, I was unclear. Kelly Jane triggered this guy today. Destiny, can you also the combo ended with the insane Twitter person to a stream crash? No, because the conversation ended. My whole computer got fucked.
No, I'm actually being serious.
At least you admitted it,
Not
bro.
relevant.
I'll give you
So
that.
let's look in general chat. Why is this person that allegedly that I harassed saying that they miss when I used to duo with my friend in ranked? Like, what's up with that? Kind of weird.
Okay, can I change my vote?
You can also look at this, where she apologized to me. I don't know why, to be honest. And all I'm gonna say is you guys can follow me on Twitter and Twitch.
These are unseen screenshots, by the way.
Allegedly, this person accusing me of these things may have faked rape allegations towards
Yeah,
someone
that's
else.
not true. And do you
And
really think that's
I
a similar
didn't-
thing to be
Oh, it's
bringing
not
up right
true.
now,
Damn,
bro?
guess what?
No,
Guess
it's
what? I'm
not.
not gonna verify the facts. I'm just gonna
Don't
accuse like
bring
you,
up
'cause I'm a
whether
piece of
someone's
shit.
being
Let's
raped
go.
or not. It's being the same as someone having an IGN that was Amelia
Let's
Ismail.
go, baby. Don't search up Henry G. Kelly Jean. Don't do it. Henry G. Kelly Jean, baby. Don't do it.
Take me out. Keep joking in. Keep joking.
No, this is like mentally
Doesn't work
ill.
like that.
You're just like,
Going hard right now. Don't you guys love me? Like,
That's so
going on?
big.
I have no fucking idea what I just listened to, but okay. Or, I mean, like, I don't... Somebody said Kelly triggered the fuck out of that guy. He didn't sound that triggered. Yes, he is. Okay. I think this is an Autism's Anonymous meeting. Yeah. You going to bed soon, or do you want a video? No, I'm taking off soon. Can you watch movies while I'm gone? Yeah, if you want to watch movies in the DGG chat. Knock yourselves out for 2 days, I think. How the fuck is this guy running? Hello? Okay. When are you back? I think 2 days. How long is this stupid fucking dungeon? If that reactor blows up, it's your fault for leaving. True. breaking news story do you predict will happen when you're out of town? Hopefully nothing too crazy. I guess we'll see, huh? You have unlocked Snowfield Aspect. Oh. This break is violence. Destiny is a girl's name. Me and my bro. Oh. Oh, that shows me when you tag me. 590. Oh my god, this is it. Yes. Boom. Paste. Oh, okay. What is this?
I had the kick deal in front of me. I had the Rumble deal in front of me. And the Rumble deal just looked better, bro. Maybe they spent all their bread on XQ and Aiden, I don't know. But like they wanted me to gamble like 30, like I could stream, but in order to make the most possible on Kick, they wanted me to gamble like 30 days or something. I don't know. Whereas Rumble, they just want me to make content. They can you can actually post vids.
I wonder if I agree with that. It might be the case that Kick has contracts like that. I don't think I've heard of any of them being like that. Are there any Kick contracts that exist right now that stipulate gambling?
I had the Kick.
Especially 30 days of gambling too. I feel like if there was an incentive for gambling, it would be on hours, not days. But, I mean, I could be wrong. Full video unavailable. Oh, well. Yeah, I would never trust anything RiceGum says also, but there might be Kick contracts that force it, but I'm not sure. Okay, have you guys been fun? Destiny, any response? Your picture literally doesn't even load. Duck murder, nice. At Destiny, Zek launched a Twitter competitor, download it. Oh, Threads? Okay, I'll think about it. I'll see how it goes. Alright, have fun guys, rip on. I'll be back in a few days. Be careful. Peace out. You want to do Tim Pool's show? Yep. Rip on. Oh wait, we gotta host somebody. I think Kick uses some kind of AI to figure out what game you're playing. It's really annoying. If I set it to just chatting, it always changes if Diablo's on my screen for too long. There must be like reading the screens or something and auto changing a shit. Oh.
face. Show us your face. What would your face be at the bottom of this? You'd be a
Jesus.
Here, mine would be like this.
All right, good luck, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that synopsis of everything going on right now. So, last night I got a little fucked up.
You did.
We listened to Deftones. Crazy night. Crazy night.
Deftones is awful music, by the way.
You're a fucking.
Ah.
I stand by that tape. It's awful.
Well, you listen to literally like 16-year-old rap about like how they're gonna uplift themselves. I just don't care. I listen to real stuff. That's about guys that just fuck. You know what I mean? Guys that just fuck and just love to be in like. Deftones is fuck music. Yes, it is.